Okay, so very good morning to all of you. Okay, so I think some of you can settle down. Today we are starting with the test number 1 of Environment in Prelims Revision Program, PRP that is. So before we start, again, how did you find the test? Relatively on the easier side? Okay. This question can be subjective. Let's say you are attempting the test for after some time. But here also you may have also gotten some questions wrong. Maybe some questions are very conceptual in nature. Whether an impact is direct or indirect or primary or secondary, we'll have a look at. Some questions, again, this is the test number 1, so you had not many questions again with respect to the subject and topic. So not many questions on species because that is going to be in the subsequent tests. And as we move along, again, you will see some papers would be, the difficulty would also be, in some case you'll have moderate, some would have slightly higher levels of difficulty. So again, that is how you have to plan. So not each test is going to be same, right? So again, if the test is tougher, you should also, if you have this, let's say, itching probability that you want to attempt more, you should also hold back. And then in some cases, today also we'll see there are some questions, even if you have lesser knowledge or lesser idea about, but the questions or statements in general can be attempted. So one takeaway or one learning from the tests, one should be that number 1, whether the questions did I attempt, was it fine or not, okay? Or if there are some questions I did not attempt, thinking that I lacked knowledge, but could I have attempted them or not, right? Second thing, with most of these questions, I'll also help you with some additional value addition, etc. So if you're making your notes on your paper itself, you can just keep on writing something that is there, okay? So that I'll try to do, so that in this whole session, not only do we revise these 50 questions, we also get to know how to attempt these questions. In addition to that, if there is any static topic or something in the current affairs, I'll tell you additionally that you can also write along, okay? So almost in the next 2.5 to 3 odd hours, we'll try to make the best use of our time, okay? Okay, so before I begin, again, people online also, can you please tell me how many questions did you attempt, and overall, how many questions did you attempt? Anybody who went 50 out of 50? That is generally a dangerous strategy, okay? Okay. Because see, if you, even if, actually I don't go by these terms, no, easy to moderate to this, because ultimately when you go into each and every specific question, you will see there are very new nuances. So which is why these things keep on changing, okay? So if somebody has done lesser questions, again, it is a journey, and everybody and each one of you has their own journey. Don't compare so much while you will get your ranks, etc. But again, a sincere advice from my side is to consolidate your parts, okay? Now, here a couple of things extra, especially for these tests, I'll tell you that 1, you will get to know what are your positives and negatives, okay? But more than that, you have to identify the pattern of mistakes that you're making. So this also you'll get to know. Here also there are some statements that you may have not read in your normal textbook, but if we apply some general knowledge or some basic science, can we answer them? So sometimes the moment you see a question, sometimes our initial, let's say, idea is that we don't want to attempt, or sometimes we want to attempt. So you have to see this, okay? Other than that, in each test you will find certain trivia, okay? Certain initiatives. So what you can do, you can start to put a star mark on them, because see, out of these 50, there may be some 15, 20, depending on how good or bad your concepts and topics are. So your point is, after you have made your mistakes, you should also have some questions that are marked, so that when you want to revise, you don't want to revise all the 50. The ones that you have made a mistake, and the mistakes can be both silly, okay, and then genuine. In the exam also, there are only very limited silly mistakes that the examiner would allow, okay? So there, if one is making them consistently, first step is to be aware, okay? So how would you be aware? If you again see this test generally can for us be a mirror, okay? So you don't have to run away from the mirror. Take the feedback again with a pinch of salt. Sometimes the question may be very specific in nature. You made a mistake, that's all right, okay? And after the test, now you know. But if it is a concept you're making constant mistakes, that is something you should strive to get better in, okay? So all these trivia initiatives, put a star mark, so that the point is you can revise them later on. In PRP, because you are expected to write tests daily. If you are only focusing on writing tests but not learning from it, again, you are only doing half of your work, okay? So your objective is to be, even if you're attempting 50 tests, before the next test, or let's say if your workload is high, after every week, so let's say Saturday or Sunday, give 2-3 hours, go through the mistakes that you have made. Mistakes will again be factual in nature, or some will be concept oriented, some will be incorrect application. You should know what kind of mistakes you made, okay? And this will vary every day, because it would not be possible for you to revise everything every day and then come and attend. So there will be times when you are lesser on preparation, but go ahead with the confidence that theek hai, I will attempt the question paper on its merit. You cannot always expect to be always 100% prepared and then attempt the test, okay? So this flexibility, etc. But the point is, reflection of the after the test is very important, okay? Last is, you are more than welcome to ask any reasoning or question, because here also, more than the answer, we are concerned about what were we thinking. This is generally the philosophy I follow in my discussions. So here also, even if you, let's say, disagree or there is a statement, the answer is given, fine, but what were you thinking, okay? In that, if we are able to refine our thinking process, ultimately your accuracy will improve, okay? So that is how the session is designed, okay? So in the initial few minutes, I'll just quickly do an overview or a recap of certain static topics, and after that I'll jump directly into the questions one by one. And in some questions, that concept or the details related to it, I'll explain there itself. For the some initial part, because some of you, I have been told, are new to the subject also. So again, like in the PRP format, we have been doing the revision in this in the initial part, and after that, as we move along, that is how we are doing this, okay? Is it making the noise? Microphone? Acha, ek second, 1 second, just give me a moment. Acha. Acha, okay, just give me a second. Okay, now how is the voice? I think it should be better now. You can just drop a text if it is better now, right? So we will just begin the discussion. Okay. So for those of you who are watching online, so today is again the last batch of PRP that is starting. So in case somebody is interested, you can also connect, okay? And if you want to know more details, I think now the voice is fine. We can begin our session now, okay? So here also, I'll just quickly give you in the almost 30 odd minutes a very quick overview of the topic we are discussing and the initial parts, right? So we're talking of environment. So of course, we should know certain basic definitions. You have ecology, you have environment. Environment, the only thing to remember is everything that is surrounding us. Things that are surrounding us can be both biotic. And again, I think most of you are aware about some of these terms. Let us be interactive here. Biotic is living. You also have abiotic. Many questions today are testing you on this knowledge also. Biotic, abiotic, biotic, abiotic. We'll have a look at biotic is living, abiotic is non living. Any example of abiotic factors? Again, so you have temperature, pH, sunlight, soil. We have asked you questions on these parts also. So many of these parts, all these are abiotic. What are biotic factors? These are living. So here also the interaction, let's say you have plants, you have certain animals, all these are your biotic factors, okay? Ecology, what is this? It is the study of environment. The study of environment here is this ecology, right? Is there a noise issue again for the people online? Now, second thing is this levels of organization. Okay, so here again, we start with an individual. From the individual, you see a population. So if the population, or let's say the individuals, they multiply, and here if you notice the species is same. I started with fish, you have more fishes now. From individual we go to population, from population we go to a community. In community, can you see different species? So not only do we have one single species, okay, I think it should be better now. So apologies from our end for this noise disturbance. I think it should be better now. Okay. So we have community, but these three are more important. Community can again be divided into major and minor. What is major community? The one that is bigger in size, that is dominant in nature. It is not dependent on other communities. You also have minor communities which are the opposite, then smaller in size. They are dependent. So these were relatively independent. They are only dependent on sun. You also have minor communities. Now these three terms are important for us. Many questions today also have been asked on these concepts. You have ecosystem. Ecosystem for us is the structural and functional part of a biosphere. Okay. When I say functional part, which means the essential functions, right from energy flow, nutrient cycling, ecological succession, and homeostasis. Today also we have a question on homeostasis also. All these are the core functions that ecosystem performs. Okay. And within an ecosystem, we have asked you terms like, for example, ecotype. Kuch questions, there is ecocline. So when we discuss that concept, I'll tell you more terms related to it. But coming back, what is ecosystem? Ecosystem is the structural and the functional component of biosphere. Structural simply means the arrangement, okay, of the various species or the vegetation, etc. So in a tropical rainforest, tall canopies. In an aquatic ecosystems, there are different layers. You find planktons, which can be divided into phyto and zooplanktons. You have nectons, you have benthos. So you have different species at different layers. All of that can be the structure of that ecosystem, right? So ecosystem has both structural and the functional component. You have a biome. For biome, the only keyword for us to remember is the division or the differentiation is based on climate. So if I can have a tundra biome, which again, where is to tundra biome? Closer to equator or closer to poles? Poles. So you will find very limited vegetation. Generally, you will find mosses, lichens there, right? Similarly, we have taiga biome. Now taiga, and you have more questions of biome in your test number 2 tomorrow. So you'll have questions on these concepts also. What is tundra, what is taiga, etc. So taiga for us is, of course, will have more diversity than tundra, but lesser biodiversity than equator. That is the tropical rainforests, right? So that is there. Then last component is biosphere. Please remember, in biosphere, the main thing is where life is possible. Biosphere is the intersection of atmosphere, hydrosphere, lithosphere. I can even add cryosphere. Okay? But main thing is, in all these things, ultimately life should be possible. Even in very cold conditions, there are certain organisms which are able to survive the most extreme temperatures. Okay? We call them extremophiles. From the name itself, the name is extreme. So they can be found in extreme temperatures, they can be found in extreme salinity, less temperature, high temperatures, high salinity, low salinity, etc. Very harsh conditions, okay, different pressures, so on and so forth. The broad term is extremophiles. Okay, so that is the levels of organization that one needs to be aware about. Third concept is the services that the ecosystem provides. All these 4 services, okay, in fact, a difference, some of the concept here have been also asked today to you. These services will be provided by an ecosystem, and I can also put a money to these services. That is known as accounting of ecosystem services. Okay, so ecosystem services, let's say what services a mangrove gives me, or a wetland, okay, or let's say a forest or a tree. These are generally divided in 4 headings. You will have regulating service, you will have supporting service, provisioning service, as well as cultural. The easiest to know is cultural service. So there are forests and trees which are worshipped by certain communities. Okay, give me any example. ठीक है, people, bargat, banyan tree, etc. Specifically, then you've also heard about khejri tree. Khejri tree is worshipped by which community? The Bishnoi community. Why is Bishnoi community called Bishnoi? Any idea? Which god do they worship? No, God. The incarnation. Chalo, I think we have a question on black book today also. I'll explain all of this. What is Bishnoi, the sect also, which god do they worship, etc. So overall, we'll have a discussion. So that I had mentioned, this is khejri tree. Okay. So cultural values can be of this sort. But this is very important. Provisioning. Provisioning for us, the understanding is provide. Anything these ecosystems provide to us. They can provide, if I'm talking of forest, if I cut it down, I'll get timber. I can also get non-timber forest product. This can be lemongrass oil, it can be resins, it can be gums, it can be even bamboo. All these are non-timber. I can also get certain medicines which the pharmaceutical companies can use. Anything which is being provided is the provisioning service. Okay. Similarly, you have regulating service, so air quality regulation, supporting services are being provided, nutrient cycling. Some questions today also are also testing you on these concepts, the application part. Okay. So all these are the services that the ecosystems provide you. 1, 2, 3, 4, divided in these 4 heads. So provisioning, regulating, supporting, and even cultural services. Okay. So in fact, there are trees which help bring down the air pollution. There are trees, etc., which can be there, which muffle, which means the noise pollution can be reduced because of that. Mangroves, for example, are helpful in filtration of water. Okay, so there are various things that can be done through the ecosystem. Now, if I am doing an economic or a monetary analysis to this, it is known as accounting of ecosystem services, right? So when I do the accounting of ecosystem services, there are few, let's say, bodies, etc., or some initiatives. The number one is the economics of environment and biodiversity. Okay, this is a study that is led by Pawan Sukhdev, who is an economist. TEEB has already been asked once by UPSC in its previous year question. The year was 2016. So direct question was asked on accounting of ecosystem services. Okay. Then you have this intergovernmental policy panel on biodiversity and environment. This is first of all not a UN body. And second thing to remember in this IPBES is that there is some secretariat services which are provided by UNEP, but still it is not a UN body. Both the things are different. Okay, UNEP provides secretariat services to many organizations, but that does not mean that body becomes a UN body. Now this body does a lot of work related to biodiversity. So you will see this body talking about a lot of invasive species which are becoming a threat. So in the subsequent test also you will see invasive species being asked. So that is there. For waves, it is basically talking about the wealth accounting and valuation of ecosystem services. This is actually led by World Bank. Waves. So from W you can also connect this World Bank. So that is waves. You have economics of land degradation. So whenever we say land degradation, you should think about United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, UNCCD. Okay. So first thing is that it is doing economics of land degradation. So if the land is lost, how much money can I put? So this is an accounting tool. So this is this taken by this initiative, number one. Second thing is UNEP plus economics of land degradation publish a very prominent report on climate finance, the State of Finance for Nature report. The State of Finance for Nature report is published by ELD and UNEP. Waves is led by World Bank. That is all you need to remember. IPBES, it is not a UN body. However, UNEP provides secretariat services. It publishes certain reports for invasive species, biodiversity, etc. TEEB is the economics of environment and biodiversity. It's a study led by an economist, Pawan Sukhdev. Generally, in these kind of questions, what UPSC can do, they can change that TEEB is a prominent initiative of UN, UNEP, World Bank, etc. So it's a simple economist led study, but it is a famous study nonetheless. Okay. In fact, we have asked you one more accounting services, that is SEEA in your yes, in your test. So that also we'll do it in that particular section only. Okay. So that is what we just saw. Pawan Sukhdev, UNEP provides secretariat, Waves is World Bank led, etc., etc. So that is the one. Achha, if you wanted to take a pic, okay. This is for the people who are following from the Sunya notes. So this is just a snippet from that. Now this concept we have also asked you and tested you on. What is a niche? What is an ecotone? So we'll have a quick look at some of these concepts. So niche, just remember, habitat, one term is habitat and one term is niche. Habitat is the overall area where the species lives, but niche is a more specific set. Niche is related to the unique functional role the species does. Unique functional role, which means, see, in this whole tree you can have parrots, you can have honeybees, you can have squirrel in the whole tree. This is their habitat, but the specific role the species have to play, the unique functional role, so this will be different. And from this we can also infer and we can also make this assertion that no two species will have the same niche. Okay, which is why I'm saying the word unique. If it is unique, then it cannot be shared between two species, right? And the knowledge of niche is very important when we talk about conservation. So if I know that this species feeds on this particular element, does the reproduction, if I save this area, I can also do the conservation. So that is why the concept of niche is important. Please remember the keyword unique functional role. Okay. Another concept that often is asked is ecotone. Ecotone is a transitional zone between two ecosystems. It is the zone of tension, it is the zone of overlap. So let's say this is ecosystem 1, this is ecosystem 2. The transition zone is going to be your ecotone. In this transition zone, if you see this line, this is a line and you see a bump, it increases in the transition zone. So what do we see in the transition zone? The species or the number of species is very high. This is known as edge effect. Now in these ecotones, would the productivity be high or low? High. The reason for that is if you have more species, more biomass is going to be produced. And here also you'll see a lot of wintering birds, a lot of other species which are not found in either ecosystems also being found here. So because of this, when you see the edge effect, it has increased or the higher productivity, which also helps, right? So these are zones wherein there is good productivity. If I talk about estuaries, give me examples of ecotones. Can I say estuaries? Estuary is what? When river meets sea. Okay. Grasslands can be one. Then mangroves. Then can wetlands be one? Okay. All these are example of ecotones which have an edge effect, and the species found in this are edge species. Okay. Now this is a transition zone. A similar term that is also used or termed is ecocline. In ecocline, whenever there is a change that is going to happen between ecosystem and 1, ecosystem 2, just remember there is going to be a gradual change between the boundaries of ecosystem. The change is going to be very gradual in nature. These are not sharp or abrupt. If the change is very sharp and abrupt, the species will find it very difficult to adapt also. So in the ecocline, the main thing is, even if the ecosystems are changing, the change is very gradual in nature. So when I discuss with you this specific term, I'll also show you an infographic wherein, let's say there is a grassland and there is almost a transition that is happening to another ecosystem. There is a huge space and an area. So the change will be very gradual. Main thing to note is the change is going to be gradual and not very sharp. Okay. That is ecocline. Now adaptations, not only in this test but in the subsequent test you will see certain questions, certain species behaviors and attributes. In adaptation, just remember the very first thing, there is a term known as homeostasis. What does it mean? Simple English is homeo or stasis means static, something that is stopped or not changing. So one thing is homeostasis can mean ability of an organism to maintain its constant internal environment. That can be one definition. Second thing, when I'm talking about this, is you should also be aware about warm-blooded and cold-blooded organisms. What are warm-blooded? Warm-blooded, can you give me examples of warm-blooded? Humans. We are able to regulate our temperature. आर वी एंडोथर्म्स और एक्टोथर्म्स? ये करा है हमने, कंफ्यूज हो रहे? यस, we also say them as endotherms. These are ectotherms. Now here good examples of warm blood can be mammals. Can I say also birds? Whereas when I'm saying cold blooded, I can give example of reptiles, amphibians. Examples of reptiles. ठीक है, frog is amphibian. Okay. So reptiles, amphibians, etc. These are example of ectotherms or cold-blooded. Now coming back, this line again directly from the NCERT, very important. 99% of animals and nearly all plants, they are not able to maintain constant internal environment, which is why if the outside environment changes, they will have to also change, and beyond a certain point they cannot, which also means they can also die or get extinct in this process. So most 99% of animals and nearly all plants cannot maintain constant internal environment. That is something you need to know. Thermoregulation is going to be energetically expensive. Now, because this is your polar bear is found in polar regions. In polar regions, would you find small organisms or big organisms? You will find big organisms. The reason is everything is related to how much energy they take versus how much energy they release. Okay, so what they eat versus what they release. Bigger organisms overall have a lower surface area with respect to their body size and volume. Okay, so here whatever they eat, let's say they are eating around 100 kilojoules, but whatever they emit or lose is, let's say, around 80. So they are able to maintain a balance, they are able to save something, which is why they are able to survive. But if it is a very small organism, in that the surface area is more, so they will lose more heat than what they eat. So because of environment, because of evolution, these are not able to survive. So small organisms are not found in polar bear, in polar regions. So please remember that. Another concept related to this is also Allen's rule. Okay, this is your Allen's rule, that even if you compare the organisms in tropical regions and the cold regions, so in the colder regions you will have smaller ears, smaller tails, etc. The main reason is to minimize the heat loss. Main keyword is minimize the heat loss. This is your Allen's rule. Okay, now just write kahin pe margins pe likho. This is something I want you to look at. Bergmann's rule, B-E-R-G-M-A-N, Bergmann's rule, already related to what I've told you, but this is a separate term. Usually in the NCERT there is this Allen's rule mentioned. Bergmann rule is just what I've told you in a different format. Also read about it and know the difference between Allen's rule and Bergmann rule. Okay, I hope this part is clear to you. So you have certain adaptations, plus there is some genetic or diversity between species also. So when you have a normal tiger, you also have a very famous melanistic tigers of Odisha. Okay, this is found where? And this is the world's only melanistic tiger, by the way, found in Simlipal, Odisha. So this is very unique. It will have more of black stripes. You also have a similar tiger which does not have black stripes, that becomes a golden tiger, which again is a diversity that you see in the species. Okay, okay. Next, when we see, for example, so again keep this in mind. So there will be certain, one is adaptation, one is certain variations that you will find across the species. Okay, next we have spoken about ecosystem. Ecosystem has two major functions. One is energy flow, one is nutrient cycling. There are other functions, for example succession. Succession I'll do when I discuss the question itself. Now energy flow is very important because a couple of concepts are related to this. So which is the main source of energy? Sun. The energy from sun is used for photosynthesis by plants. So who are the primary producers? Plants. So primary producers in land are, in oceans are phytoplanktons. Give me any examples of phytoplanktons. Chalo, theek hai. Some of you are aware. let me, चलो अभी जब यहाँ पे food chain आएगी, when I do aquatic, I'll write some of them. In case somebody is not aware, you can also write them. So now, when I'm talking of energy flow, it simply means how the flow of energy is from one trophic level to the other, right? So here also you will see the plants are at the first trophic level. These are our producers. You have primary consumers, you have secondary consumers, you have then apex predator or the top carnivores. From each level, there is going to be a loss of energy, okay? So here please remember, when I'm saying energy flow, only 10% of energy is transmitted from one trophic level to the other. Only 10%. Where is this 90% going? So respiration and metabolism, all that 90% is consumed. Only 10% is going from one trophic level to the other. Which is why, because of this 10% rule, you don't find more than 4 to 5 trophic levels, because constant energy is getting dissipated. Okay, so keep that in mind, that energy is getting lost at each trophic level. In fact, 90% energy is consumed, only 10% is transmitted. And it is this sunlight which ultimately makes everything possible. Photosynthesis happens. Okay, so that is one. This is again something that we have seen. Primary consumers, you have secondary consumer, decomposers. In fact, in the very first, I think, question, one of the statements is, are these primary consumers exclusively herbivore? Now, which is again, generally they are, but are they exclusively? We'll have a look at. Okay, they can be omnivorous, yes. Now, this is food chain. So it simply tells you how the flow and overall of energy or even numbers of biomass can be overall. So this is your food chain, okay. In food chain, land-based food chains, most of you are aware. So in ocean-based food chains, I can say phytoplanktons eaten up by. Achha, then what are planktons? Marine microscopic organisms, okay, which are very essential for the ecosystem. You have zooplankton. Now zooplanktons can be eaten up by, again I can say, let's say small fish. I can have a bigger fish. So this can be an example. Now here the main point of concern is that some examples, if we are able to know, that helps. So here you can write examples like diatoms, dinoflagellates, cyanobacteria. I can even say coccolithophores. We've asked you a question today on sea snot. Usme coccolithophores are there in news. So these are some of the more prominent ones. I can even add etc. blue, green algae, etc. In zooplanktons, can you give me example? Krills hai, copepods hai. You have phora, minifera. You have radiolarians. So for example, right now I think these are more than enough for us to write. So phytoplanktons are there, zooplanktons are there, okay. So zooplanktons are eating phytoplanktons. In fact, when that question, primary consumers are exclusively, so certain zooplanktons are eating algae, but certain zooplanktons can also eat detritus. Certain zooplanktons can also eat some other crustacean, etc., or some other substance apart from this phyto. So which is why that statement is not entirely correct, that primary consumers are exclusively herbivore, okay. So just remember these names. I am again repeating: diatoms, dinoflagellates, cyanobacteria, coccolithophores. For cyanobacteria, what is one thing you need to remember? Cyanobacteria helps in nitrogen fixation in oceans, okay. Then you have copepods, krills, foraminifera, and radiolarians. These are some of the good examples that one can remember. You have food chain, that is one concept, and this is a linear representation, a very simple representation. A slightly more complex one would be the food web, okay. In nature, would you find food chain or food web? Chances are you will find more of food web, more interconnections, things are being more connected, right. Now a concept is there, ecological pyramids. So there are three things to know. Types of pyramids are pyramids of number, pyramids of biomass, pyramids of energy, okay. And in this, only thing to remember overall is whether the pyramid is upright. This is an upright pyramid. Whether the pyramid is inverted, okay, that is what you need to know. So in the pyramid of numbers, I will find both upright as well as inverted pyramid. In fact, I can also find a spindle shaped invert. Okay, this is spindle. Even this can be found. Okay, so if I am classifying the pyramid only based on the number of species, etc., in a trophic level. So let's say if I'm talking of producers, if I just count the number of grasses, they will be huge in number. Lesser grasshoppers, lesser frogs, lesser hawk. So this is a pyramid of number. Okay. Whereas if I'm talking of the other pyramid, so now if I generally talk about a tree, the tree can be both a spindle and a tree can also be inverted depending on what I am looking for. Okay. So for example, tree would be one. Okay. It will be visited by certain birds. Okay. Plus it will be then these birds will be eaten up by some apex predator that can be generally spindle shaped. But if I count only the parasites or hyperparasites, parasites are smaller, they will be more in number, this will then become an inverted pyramid. So the same tree example can be used as a spindle also. It can also be used as an inverted pyramid. It depends on what we are calculating. That is pyramid of numbers. You also have pyramids of biomass. Okay. So here also it can be upright. It can also be inverted. This also we've asked you today, I think. Now why this inverted? Because phytoplanktons, they reproduce very quickly. They get consumed very quickly. Okay. So it's not as if they're able to be deposited just like numbers. And second thing is overall, while they can be higher in number, but overall biomass would be less. Okay. So which is why pyramid of biomass can be both upright. It is inverted in the case of aquatic ecosystems. Okay. Third is pyramid of energy. Now pyramid of energy, number one, please remember, it will be unidirectional. It cannot be bidirectional. Okay. It has to be upright. Now the other previous ones can be both upright, can be both inverted. This one will only be upright. The flow of energy is always going to be this. So you cannot have a pyramid like this. It will always be upright. Next thing, of course, these are 10% efficient, which means only 10% of the energy is transmitted from one level to the other. 90% of that is getting used or lost. Okay. So that is one thing we'll keep in mind. So that is your pyramids. Then you also have these biotic interactions. Let's quickly just see what these are. You have mutualism, commensalism, amensalism, competition, predation, parasitism. So first thing to know is what is, it is not spices, it should be species here. Okay. So here let's have a look at, so mutualism, the code for example is plus and plus. It means both the species are getting benefited. What you have to do, or other people also, if you know the examples, you have to talk it out. Those who are not aware, you can just keep on writing the examples. Yes. Pyramid of biomass. I'll have to see a specific example, but generally it would be this inverted. If it can be, I'll have to see once. In case you're also able to find, you can let me know. Okay. Coming back to biotic interactions. Now mutualism. Let's start with the examples. यहाँ पे सिर्फ examples पता होने चाहिए. Any examples? अब जो भी terms हैं, lichens. Now what are lichens? What are they? Yes, algae and fungus. The mutualistic association is this lichens. Any other example? Coral reefs. So coral polyp is one. It has a symbiotic association with zooxanthellae, which is the algae. So coral can be one example. Then chalo theek hai. Termites are these termites are your white ants. What do termites do? They will eat up wood. They can eat up wood, but they don't have the mechanism in their body to digest the cellulose. So in their gut, they have a protozoa. This is going to help in digestion. So the example of termites and protozoa is again an example of mutualism. Corals is one. Corals we do in the category of Cnidaria. Okay? Corals ke liye the overall phylum that we say is Cnidaria. That is one example. You can also talk about mycorrhiza. You can talk about pollination. In today's test we have questions on pollination also. I can talk about, yes, I can talk about rhizobium bacteria. I can talk about, I've just spoken mycorrhiza, etc. Basic examples of pollination, you have fig tree and wasp. Okay, some of you are aware this is obligatory mutualism, that it is this can only be done by these two species only. Pollination may, it can be done by other species also. Okay, so that is facultative mutualism, but you have obligatory. So please remember some of the important examples here. Then you have commensalism. It means one is benefited, other is not. Other has neither harm or benefit. Any examples of commensalism? Good. Remember epiphytes. Epiphytes are the characteristics of tropical rainforest. So when you have these tall trees, on that there are certain epiphytes which are there. These epiphytes, please remember, are only for support. They are not taking nutrition from them. If they were taking nutrition, then it will be parasitic in nature. Okay, so they are only taking support. Epiphytes can be one. Any other example? Okay, yes, that also can be there. Dung beetles we can also talk about. Birds which are there on the, yes, okay, on these cattles, that can also be one. We can also talk about sucker fish attaching its self to the shark. That can also be one example. All these are examples of commensalism. You have amensalism. Any examples of amensalism? Black wallet wala example is allelopathy. We have a question on allelopathy today also. So in this, what will happen? A particular plant will release a chemical. These are allelochemicals. This will inhibit the growth of other plants in the region. Okay, so that can be one example. Other very simple example is big tree and small tree. Okay, so there is a big tree which is blocking the sunlight for a small tree, and the small tree can do nothing for the big tree. Okay, so these are good examples. Competition is relatively easy to understand. Limited grass available hai, all the herbivores are fighting for it. Limited prey is available, the predators are fighting for it. That is competition. Okay, predation is also easy to understand. There is a prey and there is a predator. Okay, now please note the last two. Predation and parasitism are both plus and minus. But what is the difference between parasitism and predation? Yes, good. One is killed. Okay. Can death be possible in parasitism? In which case? Parasitoids. Okay, the parasitoid wasp that are there would also lead to inevitable death, but that is not usually the norm. Okay, death is certain here, but yes, in parasitoid wasp, parasitoid, it can ultimately lead to the death. Okay, predation, of course, the more dominant species is the one that is benefited. In this case, the dominant species or the host is getting harmed, not benefited. So these are some examples that one needs to be aware about. Okay, so these are certain interactions. Okay, just a couple of images. So for example, this is what is mycorrhiza. So mycorrhiza, myco jahan bhi term hoga, myco for us is fungus. So these are roots. On these nodules you will have small fungus particles that will help in better absorption. So the mycorrhiza will give water and nutrients. The plants will provide carbohydrates. How can the plant provide carbohydrates? Photosynthesis. Okay, you know what is xylem and phloem? So what is the work of xylem? Water from roots to plants. What is phloem? The opposite, the food etc. being shared. Okay, so keep that in mind. This is again example of pollination. These are your epiphytes that I just spoke about. Okay, these are the small sucker fish. They are attaching themselves to the shark. These sucker fish are also known as these remora, R-E-M-O-R-A. So here they will get the leftover also. Their predator will also not eat them, seeing the big fish, but the shark does not really is affected by these small ones. Okay, then another topic is nutrient cycling. For this, please remember this. The biogeochemical cycles can be divided into gaseous cycles, can be divided into sedimentary cycles. The gaseous cycles are also known as perfect cycles. These are also known as pure cycles. Why? Because the moment these gases are generated, they are used and consumed again. Then it is, let's say, created, consumed, created, consumed. This is entirely used in the process. And when I say entirely used, I also mean in a relatively short span of time. Whereas the moment you see the term sediment, you know that basic sediments are lying for a very long time. So let's say sediment was generated, but partially only it was used, and then it is lying for millions of years, let's say. So it is not consumed the moment it is generated. So because of these reasons, sedimentary cycles are also known as imperfect cycles. These are also known as impure cycles. Okay. So prominent examples of gaseous cycles: you have nitrogen cycle, yes, you have oxygen, you have carbon, you have water cycle, right? Same thing when you have phosphorus also. These can be sedimentary. You can have sulfur, you can also have calcium, you can even have the magnesium, etc. These are also there. Whenever you do sulfur cycle, please remember, put a star mark, because sulfur cycle also has gaseous component. So sulfur cycle, of course, through the let's say sediment from rocks, sulfur can be deposited, but it is also found in gases. Can you give me examples of how it is? SO2 is there. When SO2 is also mixed with water, it becomes, so again as a component of acid rain. In acid rain, apart from sulfur, which becomes sulfuric acid, in this slide, what extra is also there in acid rain? Okay, so it is this. So from the NO2, etc., it can ultimately become HNO3, that is nitric acid. So acid rain will have the SO2 or even the NO, NOx, or the SO particles. This will lead to acid rain. Acid rain, the pH is 7, greater than 7, less than 7, less than 7, that is acidic in nature, approximately around 4.1 to 4.5 iske beech mein. Okay, so these are your sedimentary cycles. So please remember, sulfur has SO2 also. Now if there is a volcanic eruption, you can also see the release of hydrogen sulfide, plus sulfur can also be released through DMS, dimethyl sulfide. Any idea what is DMS? डाइमिथाइल सल्फाइड सुना है? बताओ. हाँ, कौन बनाता है? सल्फर वाला पार्ट ना, ठीक है. हाँ, फॉर द सल्फर पार्ट, राइट. हाँ, अब देखो सल्फर साइकिल में पहली बात तो ठीक, एनी साइकिल, in any cycle you will have a source. From the source the cycle is the nutrients are going to be emitted, number one. Second thing is it will be consumed also, right? So sulfur cycle mein first main source is your sediment, which means let's say the disintegration of rocks etc who already had sulfur, that is a source of sulfur cycle. Second, if there is a volcano that is erupting, the volcano eruption can also lead to release of even SO2. Fossil fuel burning can also lead to release of SO2. Transportation vehicle can also lead to release of SO2, that is a gaseous form. You can also have release of hydrogen sulfide. Now this can happen in hydrothermal vents. Now these are present deep inside the earth, which releases hydrogen sulfide. This hydrogen sulfide, by the way, can also be used through chemosynthetic bacteria. Okay, in the process of chemosynthesis there are two things. One is photosynthesis in the presence of light, then there is also chemosynthesis. This can also be used. So you have this hydrothermal vents. Last thing is DMS, dimethyl sulfide. Iske liye, now this is more in news in the recent 1 or 2 years. Why? Because of something known as, I just mention it once so that you are aware. 1 second. हाँ, देखो DMS है. DMS is dimethyl sulfide. So please remember DMS, first of all, you have these phytoplanktons. Phytoplanktons actually produce DMS. So DMS is there. Now DMS has certain aerosol particles. These aerosol particles help in the formation of clouds. So just imagine this is an aquatic body. You have these phytoplanktons. Because of them, when they release the DMS, ultimately it is leading to formation of clouds, right? This is normal. If the clouds are there, this is sun. Clouds help in reflecting the sun's rays, right? This process is known as albedo. You know albedo? Reflectivity. So if there is abundant phytoplanktons, it means good amount of DMS is released, which means good amounts of clouds are formed. Now, what is happening? We know a term like ocean acidification, yes or no? What is happening in ocean acidification? Carbon dioxide level is increasing. The pH level is increasing or reducing? Reducing. There is more and more carbonic acid being produced. So what is happening? The planktons, will they increase or decrease? They will decrease. The planktons are reducing because of these harsh conditions, which means less of DMS. Less of DMS means less of clouds. If there are lesser clouds, would you have more sunlight coming in? If there is more sunlight coming in, which means more warming will happen. If more warming happens, again there is a problem. So this is why this is more in the recent news. The increase of ocean acidification leading to decline of or lesser planktons, lesser aerosol produced, lesser clouds availability, and more heating of the oceans. So when you see climate change where you see two terms, heating of both land also and heating of oceans also. So heating of oceans is happening. What can stop heating of oceans? You can also have clouds, but now lesser clouds are being formed. So DMS is also one of the source related to the sulfur cycle. Okay, so again just a couple of terms for you to note. Okay. Now nitrogen cycle is one thing that I would want you to read on your own terms. If we do it here, it will take a lot of time. But for nitrogen cycle, please remember a couple of things. In nitrogen cycle, you should know which are the microorganisms, what are the processes in a nitrogen cycle. I'll just read out a couple of terms. I just want to see whether you know these terms or not. What is, first of all, tell me, in air, which is the biggest gas as per the atmospheric composition? Nitrogen, approximately around 78. How much carbon dioxide do we have naturally? It is 0.03%. Nitrogen is around 78%. This is naturally present. So please remember, carbon dioxide aisa nahi, it is only through human emissions. It was already there as a part of the entire process. Now, second thing, there is a process known as nitrogen fixation. What is that? In this nitrogen cycle, the things that you need to remember are terms like, what is nitrogen fixation? It simply means, dekho, atmospheric nitrogen that is there, 78%, that cannot be used directly by some of these organisms. So this atmospheric nitrogen is going to be converted into a usable form. Okay. Now this can be done via microorganisms. For example, I said about cyanobacteria. Cyanobacteria can do it. Azobacter can do it. There are many such organisms who can do this. Second thing, it can be done, nitrogen fixation can be done. So one is microorganisms. Second thing, through lightning, thunder. And third is also through an industrial process. Now here, when I say microorganism, this is very important to remember that there are certain important microorganisms which are there in the process. Okay. So just any good examples of microorganisms which are helpful in nitrogen fixation. ठीक है, ऐसे काफी examples हैं. Yes, for example, you have nostoc, anabina, spirulina. Okay, you have other examples like Clostridium, you also have, by the way, on when I say this is more related to the ocean part, this is broadly under the category of blue-green algae. You also have cyanobacteria. So remember, nitrogen fixation can also happen on oceans. You have azobacter, you have Beijmachia, these are aerobic. You have Clostridium, rhodospirillum, these are anaerobic. They don't need oxygen. They can function even without oxygen or very minimal oxygen. All these are some of the microorganisms which are used in the process of nitrogen fixation. Okay? That is first overall step. After that, there are steps like nitrification. Ab dekho, when you have nitrogen fixation, this whole part is converted to ammonia. Okay, but this again has to be converted into some other usable form. So nitrification is one process. Now nitrification is a two-step process. Okay, first what is going to be formed? nitrite, and later on what is going to be found? Nitrate. It's a two-step process. Okay? It is the nitrate that is going to be used directly by the plants. And for each of these steps, there is a certain microorganism that is there. So when nitrification happens, which means when this part is first converted to nitrite, there is a microorganism. And from nitrite to nitrate, again there is a microorganism. This part is known as nitrification. But we are saying this is a cycle, which means nitrate should also get converted. So nitrate gets converted into, so there is a process of denitrification. What happens in denitrification? It is the nitrate which is again converted back to nitrogen, and that nitrogen can go in air. That nitrogen can also get leached into the water bodies also. In fact, the nitrate can also get leached to water bodies. If that happens, what is that called? Eutrophication. Eutrophication is the enrichment of nutrients. Eutrophication will happen because of two things. One is phosphates, which means from the phosphorus cycle. Second is nitrates. Have we seen the images of frothing of river Yamuna? Why is that happening? Eutrophication, excessive use of detergents. So phosphates की concentration बहुत ज़्यादा है. A lot of agriculture runoff is also increasing. So what is that? Nutrient enrichment. Algal blooms. That is also a component for you to remember. So यहाँ पे again recap, in nitrogen cycle mainly three things you have to know. One is nitrogen fixation. Second thing is you have nitrification. Third thing is denitrification. In these steps there are certain bacteria that you need to know. Again, just a quick recap, whatever I have told you. This is atmospheric nitrogen. Through certain processes, fixation, this matter is converted through, there is bacterial fixation into ammonia. Okay, even through decomposition you get ammonia, even through nitrogen fixation you get ammonia. Now this ammonia through nitrification will become nitrite, and then become nitrate. Okay, and this nitrate will be taken up by plants through a process known as assimilation. Through the assimilation process, right? One, and the nitrates can of course get leached into water, leading to eutrophication. What is eutrophication? Nutrient enrichment. Eutrophication can happen either because of nitrates or because of phosphates. Okay, so ये हुआ, you have then nitrates पे you have denitrification, for that you have denitrifying bacteria. Okay, now just a couple of terms you need to know. Nitrification and denitrification mein what all is there? So in nitrification you have nitrosomonas or nitrococcus. This is present in nitrification in the first step. So ammonia is converted into nitrite through a bacteria or through an organism known as nitrosomonas, and then nitrite is converted to nitrate through nitrobacter. So this is one piece of information for us to know. And the last piece of information for us to know is, now nitrate is already formed, you now need to know the name of denitrifying bacteria. One of the common names is Pseudomonas, or you have a Thiobacillus. Okay, so this is what ultimately your nitrogen cycle is. Now when you read your nitrogen cycle, a couple of things extra that you can read. Okay, some people, in case you are, if you want to know, you can read about. There's a term often in the news now, aquaponics. Exact nitrogen cycle is being used in this concept, aquaponics. Aquaponics combines hydroponics and aquaculture. Hydroponics क्या होती है? Soil less agriculture. Okay, so that you are cultivating a plant without a soil, you are just using water. By the way, this is possible. ठीक, तो there in aquaponics two things are there. One is hydroponics, second is aquaculture. Exact nitrogen cycle is used. Second thing you can also read about and look out into RAS. What is RAS? Recirculatory aquaculture systems. RAS is also a PYQ. But even if you know the concept of nitrogen cycle, you can still answer the question on RAS when this was asked way back. Okay, not way back, but I think this is a 1 or 2 year old question. This is recirculatory aquaculture systems. Recirculatory aquaculture systems. Okay, is this fine? Now I'll start with the discussion of these questions. Now, whatever topics are there, last image just before I move to, this was the image I was talking about, sulfates. So sulfates can be there in the sediments of iron. Okay, sulfates in the fossil fuels etc. are also there. It can also be released through volcanoes, that we discussed, through emissions. This is DMS. What is DMS? Dimethyl sulfide. So all these are parts of sulfur cycle that we just saw, and this can deposit either dryly without reaction of water or with reaction of water. So dry deposition can also happen, wet deposition can also happen. Yes, sorry, MSA is something related to, I'm not exactly able to recall the full form, but this is again a component which is related after the breakdown of this sulfur. Okay, but main important for us is this DMS. Okay, if they were just quickly Google and let me know what is the exact full form, then I can also some of these concepts, when I do the concepts, it will get again repeated. Acha, methane sulfonic acid. Okay, so this is also one of the components that can be used. Right, right. Okay, now, so you can open your papers, people who are also online. Okay, so now we will have the discussion for each of these questions, and again, in some of the questions there are certain topics also. Okay, so we will have a look at one by one. So we start with question number 1. I think people online have also opened up their answer scripts and copies. Now, with reference to the ecosystem components, let's see one by one. First is decomposers are crucial for nutrient cycling. Any examples of decomposers that you know? Examples? और कुछ? Examples? ठीक है, I was looking for these examples only, so that if there is a mistake here, I'll tell you what it is. For decomposers, just remember 2 examples. One is bacteria, one is fungus. Okay, what you are mentioning is an example of detritivore. Okay, so this statement is true. This can help in nutrient cycling. Producers form the base of the ecological pyramid. Yes, in any ecological pyramid, they are the ones who are making the food, which is how the energy flows. This is also correct. 1 and 2 has to be correct. Primary consumers are exclusively herbivores. How many of you mark this correct? Now in this case, think about both. You have aquatic ecosystems, you also have land-based ecosystems. You can have certain omnivores also, number 1. Second, again, if you think about the aquatic ecosystem, there also you have certain zooplanktons. There are only specific zooplanktons which eat algae. Other zooplanktons can also eat detritus. So if I make a statement like this, are exclusively, so again in environment or even in science, if a statement is very extreme, if you exactly know it, for example, if somebody says seahorse has male pregnancy, that is true, although that is very unique, because if I know it, I can go for it. In this case, there can be certain exceptions. Okay, and these kind of questions have been asked, ki may some let's say turtles are herbivores, some snakes are oviparous or ovoviviparous, etc. Can some turtles be herbivores? वो हो सकते हैं, ठीक है. Normally turtles are omnivores, but there is a only one specific turtle, that is green turtle, वो होता है herbivore. So again you can find certain questions. So 3 is wrong. If 3 is wrong, okay, what was the second option in your? No, एक रुक जाओ. अच्छा ठीक है, okay. If I animate 3, do I get the answer? अच्छा, तो बोला just that is why I was just asking. 1 second. अच्छा, okay. This is there. Okay, thank you. Now, decomposers and detritivores perform identical roles in an ecosystem. This is not true. If this was the case, then we would have clubbed them in only one category. What is the role? Now, please remember, this is a process known as decomposition. In decomposition, you will have roles of both detritivores and decomposers, but they don't play the same identical role. In decomposition, for example, In your NCERT only these terms are mentioned. You start with the process known as fragmentation. There is a process of leaching. ये सारे के सारे keywords आपकी class 12th NCERT में है. Fragmentation, leaching. You have a term also known as catabolism. So only two terms are of use to us. Now please note detritivores. First of all, you need to know examples of detritivores. Example of detritivores are like your termites, ants, earthworms, millipedes. These are going to break down the organic matter into small parts. So when you have an ant will break down a leaf. You have certain leaf cutter ants. Leaf cutter ants will break down the leaf in very small parts. Similarly, you know earthworms, termites, they will also break down any of these matter in very small parts. When they fragmented or broken down the matter in small parts, then the bacteria or the fungus will release their chemical enzymes. The chemical action will happen. That process is known as catabolism. So bacteria and fungus have a separate role because they will exactly do the decomposition through the release of chemical enzymes. But the fragmentation or breaking down of these matter into very small component so that they can work is the work of detritivore. So when we define detritivore, we say that detritivore are not decomposers, but they help in the process of decomposition. Okay, so you need to know examples for both. Decomposers में examples are bacteria and fungus. For example, detritivores examples can be termites, ants, millipedes, or earthworms. You can even say, for example, sea cucumber. Sea cucumber is also detritivore. Detritivores, all these are invertebrates. These are detritus feeding invertebrates. Invertebrates. So here 4 is also wrong. What should be the right answer? A, 1 and 2. Are we clear on question number 1? Now, meta population, many of you would have not seen this. This is the first time you're seeing this question. Okay, meta population dynamics is crucial for conservation of fragmented habitats. ऐसे questions में use a basic knowledge. Okay, now meta population, generally if you have a population, meta means उसके small components होंगे. Now meta population consists of isolated populations that do not interact with one another. अब देखो, if I'm talking of meta population dynamics, how is a dynamic going to be? If I'm just understanding any organisms in isolation, it is not a dynamics. So if I'm talking of meta population dynamics, it is to be done in when many of these species are reacting, they are also interacting. Environment may always remember we are talking in terms of biotic interaction as well as abiotic interaction. So one statement is in general, अगर ये normal भी होता ना, इसको meta हटाओ. Population dynamics are crucial for conservation of fragmented. What does it mean? That I know the population dynamics. So that, for example, I know invasive species are harmful, but native species are good. This is simply population dynamics. Population dynamics is also excessive human intervention is bad. This is a specific study wherein you read about subpopulations in more detail. But it cannot happen that these will be highly isolated. Yes or no? So in this case also what you are seeing, that you will do, let's say you are doing a specific study of some of these organisms, but what if they are dependent on some other, so they have to eat up something. So as this will help us in a more specific study of these population interactions. That is meta. आपने सुना होगा ऐसे, there is something known as ideology, there is something known as meta ideology. It is the thinking even on top of that. So that is the meta population. It consists of isolated populations that do not interact with each other, is not entirely accurate here. Okay. So what is the correct statement for question number 2? What is the correct answer? C. Okay. Okay. Now this is relatively easy. How many of you attempted it? अब इस क्वेश्चन में भी देखो, there is nothing controversial. कुछ भी ऐसा ट्रैप नहीं है. This question could have been more difficult also. Now water potential influences the movement of water within plant tissues. Yes or no? सोच के बताओ. Water potential, what do you talk about? You know potential energy? What is formula for potential energy? It is dependent on height. So changing in height can also influence it. Now, the water potential influences the movement of water within the plant tissues. So if, for example, these are the plants, if they have lost a lot of water through the opening of stomata, There's a potential difference, which also means would the xylem now take up more water? So can this also water potential influence the movement of water? It can, right? This is true. Soil texture determines the rate of water infiltration and retention in the soil. अब देखो, soil can be both sandy, it can be loamy, it can be clayey. If you have a sandy water, you will have more bigger particles, but if it is a loamy soil, very small particles, you will have more water getting through. So similarly, so soil texture of course can determine, hai na? This is straightforward, true. Solar radiation affects the photosynthetic rate of plants and temperature regulation in an ecosystem. It does. Okay, now a couple of statements I'll make. So here all the three statements are correct. Now, all solar radiation is used for photosynthesis. In photosynthesis, there is only a term that is used as photosynthetically active radiation that is used for photosynthesis. And this is nearly 50%. Out of this, plants use less than 10%. And this is what makes the life possible. So if you get a statement that entire radiation is used by plants, nahi. Okay, so that is wrong. It is around or even 48 to 50% that is photosynthetically active radiation which the plants can use. And usme se bhi ultimately they are able to use ultimately only 10% or less. So that is the main takeaway here. All the three statements are correct. Okay. Consider an ecosystem where an increase in CO2 levels lead to enhanced photosynthetic activity. This change primarily affects which of the following abiotic factors? Before I come to this, increase in CO2 levels leading to higher photosynthetic activity. This term has already been asked by UPSC once. What is this term known as? Isko, in case you're not aware, please write it. This is known as, this term has already been asked once. This is known as carbon fertilization. When you have more carbon dioxide available, it leads to more and more development of trees, or let's say enhanced growth of plants. CO2 is more. Why is this happening? In the presence of sunlight leads to what? Photosynthesis. So what are we saying? More and more CO2 is available. What will this lead to? More and more growth. That term, please remember, is known as carbon fertilization. Okay. So this change primarily affects which of the following factors? What did you mark? Acha, okay. Dekho, nutrient cycling is true if you take an indirect and a longer route. What is the more direct one? That is the availability of water. And why is that? Because when this photosynthesis will happen, it will also lead to opening and closing of stomata. There will be transpiration and evapotranspiration losses. So because of higher CO2 levels, or even if I say lower CO2 levels, it is the water availability that is going to be impacted. And this is true across ecosystems. So here, in case when there is higher CO2 availability, you have better growth. So there is even better water absorption use. In case when there is low CO2 availability, the water use is not very much. So sometimes more water has to be taken because for loss of compensation has to be done also. So main thing to remember here in this case is you have to talk about primarily what effects. Primarily, nutrient cycling is a very long process. Plant will make the food. Plant will be eaten by a herbivore. Herbivore will be eaten by something else. They will die. Decomposition will happen. Same thing will come to the soil, and then finally it will be then used. So your answer is not wrong. But in these options, the best answer is water availability, because again, these two are not directly related here. Okay, but the main thing, if photosynthesis is happening, you have to think about stomata. Even if CO2 is more also, although you will have better water consumption and use, but even if it is less or more, main thing is about availability of water. Everything is about conservation. So you have heard about evapotranspiration losses also. The plants will also want to minimize that. The main thing, this change is going to affect the water availability. That is the main key component here. Okay. Question number 4, the answer is C. Okay, so increasing growth trends will also impact the water, etc. Now, in this question, how many of you attempted this question? Edge effect. अब देखो इस question में which of the following ecosystems, first thing is descending order, prominence of edge effect, main thing is edge effect here. Out of these four, which will not demonstrate or which will have the least edge effect? Tropical rainforest. Again, this question is not that ki bhai dekho, some of you may think ki tropical rainforest, they are the lungs of the sea, or sorry, lungs of the earth. They take up and they have high biodiversity. This question is specific to edge effect. If edge effect was not mentioned and only the productivity was asked, then the question is different. But if edge effect is mentioned, you have to talk about any ecosystem where you have overlap between two ecosystems. In this, the most productive zone has to be mangrove. Descending order, maximum mangrove hoga. There is only one option which starts with 2. You directly get your answer. How many of you mark 2, 3, 2, 4, 1 by this logic? Okay, good. Here, main thing is edge effect. Okay. Now, grasslands will also demonstrate, but not as much. So, in that case, wetlands are highly productive. In this question, if they were estuaries, estuaries would be even on top of these mangroves. Estuaries are even more productive. Okay. So, here, please note, main thing is edge effect that is defining it. So, you have mangroves. You even have then urban forest, you have grassland ecosystems, and in the end you will have these tropical rainforest. Yes. In this case, in many of these urban forests, they will also encroach or see, for example, we've heard about Miyawaki methods, etc. So in these urban regions, in very small regions, you are going for plantation of dense forests. So from a productivity perspective, what you are seeing, it will have or it will demonstrate an even better output. In grassland ecosystem, main thing or main issue is that you have tall trees or tall grasses in grasslands? Grasses. So from a productivity perspective, they are not very much. That is the main issue. Whereas in a tropical rainforest, it is spread across so many regions and there is no overlapping of these different zones. That is how you can say. Okay. So question number 5, I think you get the answer. This is something we've already seen here. This is how the difference happens and this is how the zones are. You will have higher species to be present in ecotones. Okay. Now, which of the best exemplifies, what is the meaning of exemplify? Why example? The concept of homeostasis in an ecosystem. How many of you answered A? Agar question sirf yahan tak hota, your answer is correct. Which of the following exemplifies the concept of homeostasis? Homeostasis, the regulation of blood glucose in humans, is an example of homeostasis. It is not incorrect. But the question is asking you, in an ecosystem, this is only for an organism. I can even change this. The regulation of temperature in humans is an example of homeostasis, but it is not an example of homeostasis in an ecosystem. This is true for an organism. Your answer is not wrong. Okay, if it was only homeostasis. Okay, so if I'm talking of homeostasis, body temperature, fluids, blood and sugar, for an organism, true. But for an ecosystem, the best answer is nutrient cycling. Or in this case, nitrogen cycle, being able to maintain the fertility of soil. With soil, there is also a term that is used is buffering capacity. This here can also be asked as a one-liner. What is buffering capacity? So buffering capacity of the soil is nothing but this, the ability of the soil to withstand the changes in pH to only a certain limit, of course. ऐसा नहीं है कि we are adding fertilizer पे fertilizer, the soil is able to counter all of that. That cannot happen. So that overall is the buffering capacity of soil. Are you understanding why A is wrong and why B is correct? Here we are talking of homeostasis in an ecosystem. The answer is B. Question number 6. Okay, you have this. Consider the statements with respect to the primary aim of UN's system of environmental economic accounting. Okay, in this question, now many of you you are seeing this for the first time. ऐसा होगा? In this, can you eliminate anything which is very outrightly not making sense? अब देखो, replace GDP as the main economic indicator. Whenever we do these accountings, we only supplement it. For example, which Indian state is the most recent to have the gross environment product? Uttarakhand. ठीक है? It will replace it. This is too much far-fetched. This should not be there. This question I can directly solve via elimination. Okay? Now, If you are confused between 1 and 3 and 1, 3 and 4, how many of you were able to at least arrive till here? Many of you? Now, monitor international trade of natural resources. This is related to, yes, sites. The main thing for sites is what? That the trade does not endanger these species. Okay? So this is also not the accounting mein kaam hi nahi hai. This is not the work they are supposed to do. Okay? So here the answer is A. Is sites legally binding? Sites is legally binding. It does not take the place of national laws. Sites is intergovernmental in nature. Sites is also known as Washington Consensus. Sites maybe in the coming tests you will see more questions, so just keep a tab on it. Sites is very important for wildlife crime overall. Okay, let's go to the next question. Climax community. In this I'll just quickly tell you a concept of succession. Now there are two terms. One is primary succession, there is secondary succession also. Okay, primary succession is a succession where we start the succession when nothing existed. This is a bare rock. Now can you tell me primary succession exists where soil is present? Nahi. Soil is found in secondary. Primary when nothing is there. You all start with a bare rock. On the bare rock is invaded by certain communities. Okay, you have heard about this pioneer communities. It can be lichens, it can also be moss. What is lichen? Algae plus fungus. Then slowly steadily the succession will happen, and finally what you have is a climax community. Finally, would this be the most stable? This is the most stable stage. Okay, so there are many steps in between. These steps are also known as series or serial stages. These are intermediate stages. These are not the final one. The final one is what we refer to as the climax community. Now when you come to this mature or climax community, so even if you have a tree is getting lost, it will propagate through more and more reproduction. So other species will come via reproduction and not new species are going to be added here. Okay, so the same concept in this question, let's try to apply here one by one. Now consider the following statements with reference to climax community. Okay, the energy input from sunlight is balanced by energy released during decomposition. Almost similar, theek hai. Sorry, that is already implied here. Jo bhi hai, whenever we talk of energy, okay, so basic principles of thermodynamics will always be true, even if it is not explicit. नहीं balance पे ये नहीं है. देखो, when even if the energy is lost, the point is it is used in a process. The other part is only transmitted, that is being used. So these two things are not exclusive. So when you say the 10% law, 10% is simply saying, for example, normal thermodynamics में क्या है? That if the energy has to be transferred from one level to the other, more work has to be done in general, right? Even if we are living, we will consume energy. It is not that we will work free of cost. Free of cost for us is nothing. We will take energy. So in this case, energy input from sunlight is balanced by the energy released. In इसके बीच में जितने भी metabolic process है, we are not excluding that. No, true. अभी इसमें this see this from fractal perspective. Again, it is not meaning कि energy input is 100%, everything is being utilized and that is the final part. For this, you also need to know there are also, for example, detritus food chains. There are grazing food chains, there are detritus. So what simply this talks about, whatever energy we are getting from sunlight, okay, whatever is being produced, this simply tells you that energy that is released from the process of decomposition, it is ultimately a cycle. That is what. So again, what is there? So again, this also means nothing new is also created. Newton's cycling ka the fundamental concept is whatever is created, used, created, used, created, used, nothing new is going to be created all of that time. Okay, so that is the core idea here. Now second statement, species diversity continues to increase due to the ongoing environmental changes. Please see this. And you are talking of climax. Climax is the most stable. It is here the species diversity, when I am saying continues to increase, nahi. This has the highest species diversity. So it is here, maximum things you will find. Whatever changes have to happen will happen in the preceding stages. So should this be correct? This is wrong. The loss of individuals is compensated by introduction of new species. Bhai, this is the climax community. If there is a loss of species for whatever reason, let's say there was a pest attack, there was some forest fire, anything bad happens, the compensation is only going to happen via reproduction. These are climax communities. Introduction of a new species, by the way, just imagine if this is not native, this can lead to more problems also. So ऐसा नहीं होगा, introduction by of new species is coming. Introduction of new species would generally happen in the initial stages, in the intermediate stages. In the climax, everything is sorted. First of all, these are very stable stages, so generally the loss would not happen. Even if the loss happens, it will be compensated by reproduction. So same species will reproduce, after a period of time they will again come. Introduction of a new species would generally happen here. Okay? So make this understanding very clear. Last, uptake and release of nutrients from the soil are in balance. This is also true, tied to the idea of nutrient cycling. So question number 8, the answer should be okay. I think we've already discussed that part, right? Acha, okay, in the previous part, see, chalo, I think, is there any question for which I need to give explanation for other options also? Solar radiation and temperature are not related to that topic overall, which is why I did not overall discuss it. If you want, I can also explain that. I'll just take a, let's say, brief, I'll give you 30 seconds, people online. Till now, if there is any topic or any specific option that is not making sense, which you want any clarification on, see, actually, I think a couple of you have asked a couple of questions. I'll just quickly go through this once. See, in this case, I think there is no doubt here. In this case, the increase in CO2 levels lead to enhanced photosynthetic activity. Now, this is not, will it primarily affect solar radiation? No. Whatever radiation is coming, now these different concepts, CO2 is increasing. With CO2, remember the photosynthesis. This is why you need to know the concept of carbon fertilization. More growth is happening, right? Same thing is temperature. If CO2 is increasing, an indirect impact will lead to global warming, if you're thinking from that angle. But we are talking in this context, what is the direct impact that will happen overall in the ecosystem? Here, the water availability is going to be, the question is saying which affects the water availability. If you have more CO2, but with the better opening of stomata, you will have better water utilization. So main thing is, we are not debating on whether water availability will be less or more. Okay, so that is one major thing that you have to know, right? I think we also discussed this part here, urban and grassland wale ka bhi, we also had a discussion on this part. It is the overall, see, you're talking of descending order, which means whatever area is being taken. If I am comparing the urban forest which are there in smaller area as compared to an overall grassland system, first of all, grassland systems will not be as productive. Because again, you will have domination of these grasses, there is again fire, there are herbivores present. Whereas again in an urban forest, and let's say if I take specific examples, you will have better utilization of a small space. So that is how you can directly arrive. And even if you did not know that, directly going from mangroves, you can jump. Now the question could have been even better if, or even more difficult if there were even estuaries, mangroves, or even wetlands, or let's say other ecosystem. Let's say if I also added oceans and other open ecosystems. The more bigger the ecosystem is, let's say if there was oceans again would have been at the last. Okay, because again they would not be showing edge effects. Does that make sense, people online? Homeo maybe, I think homeostasis we have understood the options here. This also I think is clear. Climax community maybe, all these options, right? Now let's come to question number 9. And again, if there is a doubt specific, I am also seeing the comment section. You can just drop that comment, I'll just take it up. Okay. Now, there are terms. You have ecocline, you have ecotope, and you have ecophene. Okay, sometimes one can be aware about some of these terms here. Now, this is something that you can add to your basic set of knowledge already. There is a term known as ecotope. Okay, ecotope is the smallest functional unit of the ecosystem. Now, while defining an ecosystem, what did we say? That ecosystem is the structural and functional part of a biosphere. So, basic unit of analysis for us is ecosystem. If I divide the ecosystem into other parts, I will find ecotope. That is the first thing. This is correctly matched. Now there are two more things. Okay, ecocline and ecophene. Now I think you are aware about ecocline. Ecocline is the Gradual transition between ecological zones. The transition has to be gradual. So this is not correctly matched. Now there's a term known as eco-phene. Okay. Now, for example, if there are certain environmental changes, okay, in any area, for example, if you think about tropical area versus polar areas, think about the same bear or the same tiger. Okay. So there is a single species. In the tropical regions, again, whatever the metabolism is, heat availability, their color patterns, they will be different. But if they go to Himalayan region or let's say very cold regions, they will have a variation. So the term eco-phene talks about the variation within a single species due to environmental conditions. Now, here one thing is there, for example, if you're exposing that species for let's say 1 year, 1 generation, more generations, initially, and there are two terms that are used here. One is those changes can be temporary if you expose it for a very short time. But if you expose it for a very long time, and let's say after 1 generation, 2 generation, they will breed, interbreed, then these changes can also become permanent. So this then is a function of time, how long is the exposure. I hope you're able to make sense. Okay. If it is for a very short time, for example, if we go to Europe and we stay there for few years, let's say, some changes in coloration, some changes in our RBC production, etc. can change. If we go to a mountain, if we have to climb, so wahan pe bhi, you know, in mountainous regions, what will happen? The air pressure changes. Okay. So then some changes will happen. For example, the body will also vomit, nausea, but more than that, RBC, availability of hemoglobin, oxygen binding, that will also change. The more you live, again, more changes can happen. So that is there. The eco-phene is what? The variations that happen in a species due to environmental conditions. Are these 3 terms here? Okay. No, but in that case, they are there for a very, very long time. So when you have an African elephant, those are proper genetic changes that have happened. Okay. And again, geographical isolation is also true. Different continents, different times for a very long time. So that is there. Now, same thing if I'll tell you, for example, we are bringing, sorry, which speciation, maybe there are times. Okay, so you have peripatric, allopatric, sympatric, there are many times. One of them which is simply talking about the geographical boundary. For example, if there is, because of geographical locations, speciation has happened in this case, for example, so then you will have different attributes. So they will have longer ears, bigger bodies, etc. That has happened for many years. Same thing, by the way, I'll just quickly have a look at. Which species are we bringing from Africa to India? Relocation? Cheetah. Asia cheetah got extinct. We are bringing the African cheetah. Now, one of the reasons why we are bringing the African cheetah is that it is one of the oldest ancestors. So, aisa nahi hai, we are bringing a absolutely different species. So, of course, we wanted to bring the Asiatic cheetah, but the issue was Iran wanted the Asiatic lion in exchange. Second, the Asiatic cheetah were hardly 50 in number. So, for a viable population, we wanted more number. They had very limited number, right? Second issue, why we actually brought African cheetah was that they were close ancestrally. So if you go many generations back, they are the main ancestors. From that the whole lineage has come up. So if you bring them, so it is then not a very wild species that you are bringing. So that was the core idea while bringing them. Okay. So these are things that again can be used. Let's come to question number 10. Okay, I think till now your doubts have been answered. Koi baat nahi, kuch bhi aur ho, you keep on mentioning that. Now, question number 10, statement number 1, the atmosphere plays a critical role in maintaining Earth's energy balance. Yes or no? Yes. Statement number 2, the natural greenhouse gas effect caused by the gases in the atmosphere is primarily a result of human activities. True or false? False, pakka? Now, in the atmosphere, do you have carbon dioxide? Do you have methane? Do you have water vapor? Now, carbon dioxide, is it present naturally? Yes. Is methane present naturally? Tell me the sources of methane. Natural. Wetlands. Or kuch? Or kuch? Animals. So again, even termites. Okay. Dead decaying matter. All these can be natural sources. Water vapor is also one. Now, ab dekho. Is question mein, if I had removed natural, the greenhouse gas effect caused by gases in the atmosphere is primarily a result of human activities. What is the answer? This is also true. Even if natural was not explicitly mentioned, and the reason for that is, please remember, whenever we say greenhouse gas effect, you need to know there is a natural greenhouse gas effect, This has been existing for millions of years. If this was not existing, the earth would have not been habitable. Otherwise, our temperature would have been minus 16 or minus 18. It is this natural greenhouse gas effect which makes the temperature around 16 to 18 degrees Celsius. This has already been existing. But abhi in the recent times, when I say recent times, post the industrial revolutions, and more specifically in the last 50 odd years, the human enhanced greenhouse effect is there. So something that was already there has become more. So CO2 levels have increased, methane levels are increasing, nitrous oxide, N2O, etc. these are also increasing, fluorinated gases, these are increasing. All these are what? Greenhouse gases. Do you know what is greenhouse effect? Anybody can explain? Batao, greenhouse effect. So here also please remember greenhouse effect mein, for example, this is sun, this is incoming radiation. What is incoming radiation? You can have ultraviolet rays. This is short wavelength, but the terrestrial or the outgoing radiation, this is long wave. The long wave radiation, is it UV? It is infrared. Now this outgoing radiation is going to get trapped. Trapped by what? A blanket. Blanket is created by the greenhouse gases. So this outgoing radiation is getting trapped. Pehle kya hota tha? It was getting trapped. True. Pehle our blanket was very simple. Now the blanket has become very advanced. So now you have the best quality of blanket. Just imagine that. So it is making you feel warmer and warmer. But the problem is, in summers, why do you want to feel even more warm? Right? That is the issue. So greenhouse gases are increasing. The blanket or blanketing effect is increasing. So the prominent greenhouse gases include carbon dioxide, methane, the nitrous oxide, and the fluorinated gases like hydrofluorocarbons. वो बाद में आएगा. CFC, that is chlorinated gas, that is ozone depleting. Okay. You have PFC and SF6. All these are fluorinated gases. All these are examples of greenhouse gas. And just for reference, all these greenhouse gases are covered under Kyoto Protocol. Kyoto Protocol talks about reduction of greenhouse gas. It covers all the 6 greenhouse gases. Okay. So please remember, it is the infrared rays which are getting trapped, which leads to warming or heating of the earth. So now more and more of this is getting trapped because GHGs are increasing. That is the whole core issue that you need to be aware about. Okay, yes. Roshni, the trapping of long wave radiation is the main core issue that one needs to be aware about, right? So we'll keep that in mind. 6 greenhouse gases, all these 6 are covered under Kyoto Protocol. Okay. Same चीज यहाँ पे भी दिख रही होगी. अभी greenhouse gases here are less in the natural part. In the human enhanced part, you have more greenhouse gases. Okay. I think this answer should be clear to you. Now, in this, let's see, ecological niche includes both biotic and abiotic. अब ये चीज ना कैसे भी term हो, environment includes biotic, ecology includes biotic, ecosystem includes, this will be true. In the niche also they have to interact with the air also, with the food also. This has to be true. Okay. A landscape represents the highest level of ecological organization. Can this be true? What is the highest level? Biosphere. You have ecosystem, you have biome, you have biosphere. Okay. This is wrong. Now, in some books, you can also find this classification, wherein you have biosphere, you have biome, but between biome and ecosystem, you also have a landscape. Okay. So for just for your reference, in certain books, even this diagram is mentioned exact. So from genes to cells to organs, or organism, population, community, ecosystem, only one thing is extra that is mentioned is a landscape. But in most, you will also find this 6, but in some you can also find a 7. So just remember, between a biome and an ecosystem. Why? The reason is also because biomes in general are huge areas and ecosystems are generally small. So between them, one more level of interface is added, that is your landscape. Okay. So just remember that. And again, if you normally know that biosphere is the biggest or the end level, that option is also wrong. Okay. So that should make sense, right? Now coming back, biotic communities are characterized by energy flow, but not by nutrient cycling. How many of you attempted this question? क्या हमारा इसको? ठीक है. अब देखो, there is also this syntax, this you will see across many papers, even in question on science and tech, economics or environment. If the examiner has to make a question incorrect, what they will do? They are doing X, but they are not doing this. The moment you see something like this, be very alert. I'm not saying this will always be wrong, but generally there is a high question. If the examiner is making it highly specific, but not this, there is a chance that it may be wrong. So based on your knowledge also, you can try to eliminate. If you know, even better. This is wrong. They can also be characterized by these communities. So answer here is 1. This is again same thing, niche, different species, and overall they have their different niche. That is something that we have seen. Can 2 species have the same niche? No. This is their unique functional role that we again are aware about. Okay. These kind of questions are, we have added some of these questions in this test specifically to test the basic part of understanding whether are we able to eliminate or not. Now, in a forest ecosystem, if a disease drastically reduces the population of primary consumers, what is the most immediate impact on energy flow? ऐसे questions में first thing is the most outrightly wrong should be eliminated. If there is a drastic reduction, will it increase the energy efficiency? ये तो हो नहीं सकता. Increase in biomass of primary producers, नहीं होगा. हो सकता है, but we are saying the drastic decrease. What you are referring to is also known as a trophic cascade. वो भी हमने पूछा है आपसे लास्ट में, ठीक है. So in this case, increase in the biomass, this is not the most immediate effect. What you are saying then is also that, for example, if herbivores are not there, so grass will increase. That is what you are saying, right? But this will take time. What is more immediate? What you have to see here, you are talking about in a forest ecosystem, the population of these consumers have increased. So सबसे पहले dependent कौन है उनसे ऊपर वाले? Who will be eating them? So the best answer is बस decrease in energy. But what you are saying is also true, and for that you have a term known as, this is I think question number 49 if I'm not wrong. I'll also explain that question again. Topic, trophic cascade means, for example, if you have, let's say, lions or tigers, if the population of tiger reduces drastically, then what will happen? So then the population of deer will increase. If the population of deer will increase, what will happen? Overgrazing will happen. But this will take time. These things were also seen in a very famous example that is often quoted is Yellowstone National Park. Okay, so when the population of wolves automatically, or let's say, started to reduce in Yellowstone National Park, I will give the same concept again in 49. Then what happened? Slowly the population of deers increased, and that led to overall overgrazing, and the entire ecosystem collapsed. Which is why many years later, when they were again brought back, the whole ecosystem revived. ठीक है? तो ये वैसे गलत नहीं है. Conceptually, you are right. But what is the best answer that you have to see? Best is directly who are dependent on them. Decrease in energy available to secondary ones. Yes? So in fact, even this can be there after a point of time. But this is not the most immediate impact on energy flow. Energy flow, again, remember, is unidirectional. So if one node is attacked or is not working, this is impacted. This will also be impacted. And then later on, after a period of time, other things will also be impacted. Are we clear on this? How many of you marked B? Okay. Even if you marked A, I think now you're able to understand what is the exact demand for this question. Question number 12. Okay. Fine. Okay. Which of the above factors can directly affect, again is question mein, please be very careful, we are talking about which can directly affect the structure of a food chain. Now, availability of sunlight. देखो, sunlight, the moment I say sunlight, just think about photosynthesis. So CO2 plus H2O, sunlight availability is a very important factor. अगर food नहीं होगा, so of course the propagation of energy cannot happen. This has to be important. Population density of predators. Just think about it. More predator, or if you have more predators or less predators, this will also influence how the structure of food chain is. Yes or no? If you have very less predators, you will have more of herbivores and you have more of primary or secondary consumers, right? Then you have the soil pH, and you also have introduction of a new species. देखो, introduction of a new species, it can be native also, it can be non-native also. If it is non-native, it will also influence. If it is native, it will also influence. Because overall, IMC food chain is composed of species only, which are present in any ecosystem. All these will have a direct impact. Would the soil pH have a direct impact? Soil pH will have an impact, but the impact is not direct. Soil pH, because see how the soil formation is happening. For example, if you have, let's say, a plant has produced the food is let's say eaten up, apex predator has eaten up, then there is a vulture, then the decomposition is happening, then all these nutrients, ammonia ions, all the nutrients, then they go to the soil. So soil wala part will take time. If the question was this, which of the following can affect, which is why in this test many questions are primary or direct. If the question was only this, if I remove this, which of the following factors can affect the structure of a food chain? Can. This is fine. All four are is the answer. Then the answer is this. However, if now the question is they directly affect, because here the moment you are now understanding nutrient cycling or these concepts or soil pH of the soil overall is influenced over a period of time, not directly. Okay, so it is just like sunlight. Yes, direct impact can be there, but for soil pH it will take time to ultimately influence the quality. अब देखो soil pH अगर खराब होगा, or let's say if the soil pH is too acidic or too basic, what will happen? The growth of plants will be impacted. Energy then will be impacted later on. Then which organisms are eating, they will be impacted. So it can impact, but not directly. Please note. I hope you are able to understand. So the answer, the best answer, if the question is direct, is 1, 2, and 4. If this was not mentioned, then it can be 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? Yes. Right? We are saying the changes in soil pH. For example, whatever is the pH of soil, that change will happen over a period of time, not immediately. Right? So what we are saying, which of the following can directly affect, main thing is structure of food chain. The question is not that which of the following abiotic factors will have an impact on ecosystem productivity. Both these two things are different. The question is structure of a food chain. देखो इसीलिए the concept of food chain is criticized, because this is not an ideal concept. We do a lot of approximation here. If the question is which of the following affect the productivity of an ecosystem, answer will change. Because then your question is, for example, if acid rain is happening constantly, okay, this can also influence. So there are certain plants which thrive well in acidic conditions, some thrive well in alkaline conditions. But the question is which is changing. देखो दो चीजें, एक है soil pH determine कर रहा है, and second question is now when we add more complexity, if I am changing the pH of the soil itself, pH was let's say 5, मैंने pH ही change कर दिया, तो question is not saying कि changing of soil pH. The question is whether soil pH can determine or affect the structure of food chain or not. So though that is a slight differentiation. However, if the question was which is affecting the productivity of the ecosystem, then soil pH will be a consideration, yes. But I am now focused on structure of a food chain. Food chain, the main thing is I have to talk not just about plants. We are only thinking of plants. Plants transmitted to consumers, to secondary consumers, to apex predator, that is the structure of food chain. So even if there is a change here, to impact the entire food chain will take a very long time. In this case, the food chain would not change because of change of plant. At max, quality will reduce. Earlier 100 kilojoules were being produced. If the soil has become acidic, and acidity भी एक second में change नहीं होगी. Acidity, whatever is changed, now let's say it is 90 kilojoule, right? Change has happened, let's say. But the structure of the food chain will still remain the same. That is the main takeaway here, right? So the main focus of the question is structure of the food chain. Yes. No. First and third are not similar. Availability of sunlight is different. Availability of sunlight is directly impacting the process of photosynthesis in a food chain, whatever is the process, right? Ultimately, you have to have the energy flow. For that, food has to be produced. Soil pH is indirectly will be impacting that always. Soil में जो भी है, whatever, if it has micronutrients, if it does not have micronutrients, that is a separate consideration for us. But sunlight is directly impacting the photosynthesis. You tell me, yes or no? So that is separate. ये अलग हो गया. This is a direct. Agar if sunlight is impacted, if it is night, then of course everything will be impacted in a food chain, because then the herbivores will go out for some other area. They'll go and hunt in some other place. Yes or no? But soil pH, first of all, soil formation of course is a long process that we need to know. Weathering happens, a lot of change happens. So soil pH is an over time long phenomena. And second, its impact on the structure of the food chain is always indirect, not direct impact. Does this make sense? But sunlight, direct photosynthesis, CO2 plus H2O in the presence of sunlight creates energy, and that energy goes across a food chain. Yes or no? So that is why the answer here is C, 1, 2 and 4. Okay. Okay. IPCC studies have shown a decline in bee population. Which of the following might impact the food chains in terrestrial ecosystem? देखो, initial decline and then increase, etc. This does not happen. If there's a decline in bee population, in fact, if there's a drastic decline, this can be very catastrophic to the ecosystem, very harmful. Okay, initial decline and then increase, ये होगा. Then disruption in population leading to reduced plant diversity. This is the most obvious impact. Yes, will this happen? Yes. और भी options देखते थे. Enhanced population of herbivores due to more plant availability. Not really. No significant impact as bees are not part of the terrestrial food chain. This is also wrong, right? Which is why pollination in general is a very important exercise. And in general, agar butterfly or bee population drastically reduces, this will always be very dangerous. Okay. Now IPCC is mentioned. Can you tell me by which bodies IPCC was created? And the answer is UNEP, and in the year 1988, right? In the subsequent test, we'll also see the assessment reports of IPCC. IPCC is most known for its assessment reports. Okay, question number 14. I hope you're clear. The answer is B. Disruption in pollination leading to reduced plant diversity. Okay. Pollinators can be many insects, bees, butterflies, hoverflies, moths, wasps. You can also have squirrels, birds, so on and so forth. So many options are there. Bees, in fact, one of the best or the biggest pollinators. Now the question is saying bees. Anything that you remember specific to bees that was asked by UPSC very recently? Chalo. Do we remember this? Waggle dance. Okay. If you find anything, Apis, Cardigonia, Mellifera, Apis in general is related to bees. Okay. So there are of course many other names which they will have. Iske saath you would have also heard about bees, the colonies. With bees there is something known as colony collapse disorder. This is also a very famous term used in this case. You will have the queen bee, you will have the worker bees, colony collapse disorder, you have a waggle dance. All of this is associated with the bees. All right, let's move to the next one. Question number 15. In the aquatic food webs, phytoplanktons are primary producers. True. Phytoplanktons perform photosynthesis, converting solar energy into chemical energy. Is this straightforward? This is fine. Again, quickly repeat examples of phytoplanktons that we discussed. Yes, waggle dance has been asked. Fair. Yes, so again, the more you repeat, the more you remember. Diatoms, cyanobacteria, dinoflagellates, coccolithophores. Okay, 15, the answer is A. अभी भी देख सकते हो phytoplankton example like dinoflagellates we discussed, image from Britannica, diatoms, copepods we have spoken about in this case of zooplanktons, and then there are many other examples, mackerel hai, squids hai, tuna, there are different names of fishes, okay, that one can be aware about. Tuna hai, amphipods, sunfish, lanternfish, etc, etc. Chalo, coming back, ecological pyramids, again very straightforward, these questions we can do faster. Pyramid of energy can never be inverted in any ecosystem. Yes. Pyramid of biomass can be inverted in aquatic ecosystem due to rapid turnover rate of producers. Yes. The answer is both. Question number 16. This we have already done. Okay, inverted pyramid because of rapid turnover, which means the moment they are created, consumed, and of course biomass is less. Okay. A pesticide like DDT is sprayed extensively in a region. Over time, it is found in high concentrations in predatory birds, such as eagles. Eagles are the top of the chain. This phenomena is an example of magnification. अब बताओ जल्दी जल्दी. What is bioaccumulation? It is across one set of species. So it means the pollutant will increase. So in 1 hour, let's say the pollutant was, the quantity was 10 kilos, or let's say 10 grams. एक घंटे में. In 1 day it becomes 100 grams. In 1 month it becomes 1000 grams. So in one set of species, the concentration of pollutant is increasing, one set of species. Magnification is across trophic levels. So even if phytoplanktons have it, zooplanktons will have it more. Best example is here. इसमें कम, यहाँ ज़्यादा, humans have most. So it ultimately can enter into our food chain, right? Same thing you can also see here, DDT is there. Water, phytoplanktons concentration is increasing. So it ultimately ends up in the food chain, okay? Now DDT, biodegradation, using of biological organisms to degrade any of the matter. Bioremediation, can you tell me what is this? Now used for waste treatment of waste management. One very good example is the treatment of oil spills by oil eating bacteria like oil zapper, oilivorous S. All these are examples of bioremediation. ठीक है? DDT जो है, DDT is also a POP, persistent organic pollutant, and POPs are governed under which convention? It is the Stockholm Convention. DDT के लिए एक और नाम लिखो. In the recent times this name is also there. Organochlorides या organochlorines. Organochlorides. देखो, when I say the name dichloro, what is the full form of DDT? Dichloro, diphenyl trichloroethane. Chloro आ रहा है. So these are organochlorides, which are very harmful to the ecosystem, and organochlorides are again types of pesticides. So if you find this term also, then again don't be thinking that what is this new term. DDTs are one of the POPs under the Stockholm Convention. Stockholm Convention is related to persistent organic pollutants, right? So keep that in mind. The answer to question number 17 is B. Okay, now this question, again these kind of questions are important. Mercury hai. Improper waste disposal can lead to release of mercury. Yes. Through the batteries also, through CFLs, many other things, mercury can be released. It can cause neurotoxicity in humans. Acha dekho, question number 18 type questions we've asked you, where it is not a simple table, it is a three-way table. In this, all the things have to be correct. So mercury is correct. It can cause neurotoxicity in humans, absolutely correct. With mercury, what is the convention and what is the disease? Minamata disease, and there is a Minamata Convention. Okay, is India signatory to Minamata Convention? It is. Has India ratified Minamata Convention? Yes, both are true. Sign bhi kiya हमने, ratify bhi kiya hai. So remember that. DDT से what we'll remember? POPs, organochlorides, Stockholm Convention. Therein pesticide uses, of course. Plus it can also lead to egg shell thinning in birds. This is also true. And when the eggshells will thin, there are more chances of getting disrupted. Plus DDT will also have an impact on humans, even in the child's development, in other things. So this part is also true. PCBs, polychlorinated biphenyls. Now for you, both of these are your POPs. PCB already aa chuka hai in your previous question. This is not a famous cricket board. This is polychlorinated biphenyls. Okay, so this is released by industries. Now this, अब देखो, जब भी क्वेश्चन ऐसा होगा ना, bioaccumulation in aquatic ecosystems, this will happen. If this question was, this can also be carcinogenic to humans. Yes, this can also be true. This can also be above वाली चीज भी carcinogenic हो सकती है. So the point is, you don't have to cram कि this will lead to bioaccumulation. If this was also mentioned here, this is also true. These are simply pollutant. Pollutant अगर पानी में जाएंगे, if they go in water, this will lead to bioaccumulation. What is accumulation? Over a period of time, in the same species, concentration of waste is increasing. So nothing very fancy or different about it. Now will lead be released from agriculture runoff? This is not correct. However, lead can lead to kidney damage. But if this is not correct, this becomes wrong. The answer is only 3. Ab lead hai, from science and tech perspective, you should know what is leaded petrol, what is unleaded petrol. There was a recent country which was not in the immediate news but sometimes in news, that was the last country to eliminate leaded petrol. The hint is it is in Africa. You should read. देखो कि leaded petrol क्यों हमने हटाया. What is octane rating? What is cetane rating? This is all fuel related. Okay? तो lead में same thing. अब देखो UPSC ने एक बार क्या पूछा? Whether lead is present in lipsticks. True or false? It is true. So lead is also one of the adulterants that is there in lipsticks. Same thing they asked you about monosodium glutamate in the fast food. MSG सुना है हमने? Yes, Ajinomoto, etc. So again, these kind of questions, जो भी आएंगे pollutant, it will be both based on environment plus science and tech. Okay. अपनी margins पे कहीं पे लिख लो. This was asked this year, but has been in use since the 2 or 3 years. PFAS. These are also known as forever chemicals. This is known as per and polyfluoroalkyl compounds. The more famous name is forever chemicals. It was in use since 2022, but finally UPSC ने इस साल पूछा 2024 में. And again, very simple question they had asked you. If they wanted, they could have even asked you more difficult, whether they are also banned under the Stockholm Convention. उसका आंसर partially yes है. The answer is partially yes. Forever chemicals. Yes. For this, it will be found in both, but in aquatic ecosystem, you will see a huge increase. In our case, for example, even in hawks, even in eagles, etc., there is also the increase of pollutants. So in that, I am not sure whether we can have a strict bifurcation in which aquatic system. In case you're able to find, we can also discuss about that. But I think we can find that in both, because even in vultures, for example, the same thing happens. Even for hawks and eagles, the same thing, that is in land. Same thing also happens in the case, because ultimately, देखो एक चीज याद रखो. Why is biomagnification happening? Just tell me. In your NCERT, there are 2 or 3 conditions mentioned that for a pollutant to biomagnify, what should be the conditions? Tell me. पहली चीज, हाँ, very important. Should be soluble in water or soluble in fat. It should be soluble in fat. If it is soluble in water, it will be washed out, released. Second thing, should it be mobile or static? It should be mobile. Should it be long-lived or short-lived? It should be long-lived. All these conditions are there for a particular pollutant to biomagnify. Okay. So in general, I think it can be there, but of course, this is a more, let's say, good question, specific question. We'll have a look at. Okay. नहीं तो मुझे एक class का remind कर देना. Tomorrow when we start, I'll just answer this. Here the answer for 18 is only 3. Okay. Allelopathy. It is a form of competition. Let's see what this is. Allelopathy. Allelopathy में there is a release of chemicals. Okay. So what these allelochemicals will lead to, for example, if this is one, let's say this is a black walnut, it is releasing certain chemicals. It is stopping the growth of other. Now, between plants, why is there a competition? They are competing for same resources. They are competing for sunlight, nutrition. So, allelopathy is a form of competition. Yes, it is. Second, it involves the release of chemicals that inhibit, which inhibit means to stop the growth of other plants. Yes. Is it an example of predation? It is an example of sorry. Amensalism. Why is it amensalism? Because on one there is a negative impact, but the smaller plant cannot have a direct impact on the bigger plant. So for example, in this case, this is harming this plant. This is negative impact on this one, but this is not impacting this one. So for this it is 0. They are sorry. They are competing for the resources. But in this one example, देखो competition जो हम लिख रहे हैं, देखो competition is they are competing, but some of the plants are evolved in the context. They are releasing certain chemicals. They are almost stopping their competition. But these smaller ones cannot do this. हम जब relation बनाते हैं between 1 and 2, तो between 1 and 2 we create it. Now, why are they called forever? एक और चीज याद रखो. When we say DDT, we are saying persistent organic. Persistent means present in a very long time. Are they biodegradable? No. Same issue is there with forever chemicals. Why are they forever? सुना होगा आपने Diamonds Are Forever, very famous James Bond movie. So here also, why are they forever? They are not biodegradable, and anything which is there for a very long time, dangerous. Plastics, that is why there is an issue. These pollutants are there for a very long time, not biodegradable, hence a problem. Okay, next, which is the correct sequence? Which of the following is a good correct sequence? So how can we start? Question number 20. Photosynthesis है, respiration, decomposition and combustion. You will start with photosynthesis, then the respiration, other things will be released here, then we'll go for decomposition. Okay, and lastly is combustion. What is the answer then for question number 20? It is A. Okay, fair answer. So here almost the same sequence, and combustion for is the human made part here. We directly start with photosynthesis overall in the carbon cycle. So that is one. Now next, with respect to ecological succession, pioneer communities or species contribute to soil formation. Yes, they will help in the soil formation, let's say lichens, and later on pioneer species will help, yes or no? Climax communities are unaffected by environmental changes. Nahin. Of course, these are most stable, right? But to say that these are unaffected is again an extreme statement. They would be affected. But the thing is, if I'm taking this versus intermediate, intermediate is more impacted, this would be less impacted because they are more stable in nature. In fact, if they are impacted, they will also quickly regrow back. But this statement is not correct, saying that they are unaffected by these environmental changes, right? Next, secondary succession can restore an ecosystem after a disturbance. So, ab dekho, this is a secondary ecosystem, secondary succession. There was already soil, there's a forest fire, there can be a volcano, there can be any man-made or natural issue. After that, when the succession happens, that is secondary succession, right? So this can help in restoring. Now my question to you before we answer this, between primary and secondary, which is fast? Secondary will take very less time, okay? Primary succession requires the presence of soil for its initiation. Nahin? It can be there also on a bare rock, yes or no? This is also, what is the correct answer? 21? Only 2? How many of you got this correct? Okay, very good. Now, which of the following, now please note the question is saying, which of the following is the example of behavioral adaptation? Now here there will be some adaptations which are not a part of behavior. Adaptations can be morphological, which means they are structural in nature. They can be behavioral. Okay. Now, here can you see any odd one out, which is not as per the behavior? Just first of all, let's see the pattern. One thing is hibernation. One is bright coloration in poison dart frogs. That is not a behavior. That is how their skin or their body looks like. Yes or no? So this is not behavior. Behavior is, for example, if a species is going out for a migration, for a hibernation, that is their behavior. They're responding to a change. But if the body is made in such a way, for example, some organism creates venom, that is not a behavioral change. Yes or no? Do you know the distinction between them? So this is there. So bright coloration in poison dart frogs. What should be the answer in poison dart? 1 second, question number 20. This is incorrect. Then flocking behavior in birds. This is simply known as what? I can say migration. Yes. This is fine. This is fine. Thick fur in polar bears. Why is there thick fur? Why? To keep them warm. And this is again as a part of their body, not as their behavior. So please note there is a difference between their behavior and what is there in the body. These will be more rightly said as structural or morphological, which is there in the outer body in general itself. Now, इसमें बस एक चीज याद रखो, when I'm saying hibernation in bears, why does hibernation happen? To reduce the metabolic activity, to save energy. This hibernation, please remember, happens in, there is a term aestivation. Aestivation happens in, there is a term brumation. Brumation is the same activity of hibernation, but this will happen in case of reptiles and amphibians. They go for brumation. Another term is also used as cryptobiosis. All these are mechanisms to save energy, to be able to withstand very harsh conditions. Hibernation, you know, bears, winters, yes. Aestivation, summers. One very good example can be snail. Same activity. So aestivation is how we write, like AST, aestivation. You have brumation. Brumation is done, for example, in case of reptiles, amphibians, etc. And then you have cryptobiosis. Some organisms like tardigrades, they do this. Tardigrades, if you've heard about it, these are supposed to be the most resilient organisms. Of course, these are microorganisms. They have survived the most harshest of conditions and they are able to undergo something known as cryptobiosis. Main thing, just remember, this will be done by the reptiles. Sorry? But in some cases, let's say cryptobiosis is more complex to understand. In cryptobiosis, there are at least 8 variations that happen. Crypto is the umbrella term for temperature, for salinity, everything. There is some specific term. So there can be more and more changes at the genetic level also, and how evolutionary the species has changed. But just because this term hibernation was mentioned, so again some related terms I've told you, that in harsh conditions, how are the species able to survive? Okay. Simple. Yes. They're not able to. Yes. Of course. Yes. Because of course, main thing is these alligators, crocodiles, all these are cold-blooded. Okay, so that is the main takeaway for us. Okay, sorry. To question 23. Increase in forest fire in region is likely to lead to which of the following ecological consequences? Increased carbon sequestration. Ulta nahi hoga. Stored carbon is now getting released. Loss of habitat for wildlife. This can happen. Yes. Enhanced soil moisture levels. Not really. Proliferation of plant species. Iska ulta hona chahiye. So what is the correct answer here? Relatively straightforward at 23. Now, this question I think also you can answer if you have some basic idea. Which of the following forest types are classified under, please note, tropical, moist, main thing is deciduous. These have been asked previously, if you remember, एक question specifically पूछा था, evergreen and deciduous. Sal, teak, what are they? Deciduous. Okay, this is true. Now, when I say Khasi community reminds you of Garo, Khasi, Jaintia. These hills are where? Meghalaya. Meghalaya is known for, you have Moss and Ram in Meghalaya, huge rainfall. So here you should have evergreen. Should 4 be your answer? आना चाहिए. अगर आपको bamboo नहीं भी पता, in case 4 eliminate करो, you get your answer. 1 and 2 has to be there. Sal and teak. Now sal is again very prominent in Odisha, in other parts. Okay. Teak in general is used in various, let's say, furnitures. So here this is how you can do. Now again, if you do bamboo forests, so here also, bamboo, is it a grass? Yes or no? Bamboo is your grass. And by the way, bamboo is also your non-timber forest product. The recent amendment that happened to the Indian Forest Act of 1927, this amendment happened in 2017. It classified earlier in the definition of the trees, the term bamboo was also mentioned. Now in the recent amendment, the term bamboo has been removed. This will also enable, at least in non-forest areas, etc., bamboo can now be felled. Pehle kya tha? Bamboo was mentioned in the definition of tree also. If it is mentioned definition of tree, if you cut it, you will attract a penalty or a fine. So this change also has been done. So please remember that. Here the answer is 1 and 2. ठीक है? Again a very relative easy question. इस क्वेश्चन में जरा टफ होता कि ये कॉन्सेप्ट आया कहां से है? Any idea? The concept of JFM has been introduced from where? The answer is National Forest Policy of 1988 introduces the concept of JFM. You can just write that somewhere. Other than that, let's evaluate each of these questions. JFM involves, the idea of JFM is local people are participating in close collaboration with the State Forest Department, for example. So this is JFM. Both of them are jointly managing a resource. So it involves participation of locals in the forest conservation, yes. In JFM, ownership of forest land is transferred to the local community. This is not true. They are managing it, but ownership की बात नहीं है. This is not true. JFM aims to balance ecological, economic and social objectives. This is true. Okay. So here the answer is C, 1 and 3 only. Okay. Let's talk about grassland biomes. Major sources of cereal crops. In many cases, they are also known as granaries of the world. You have heard about prairies? Prairies are granaries of the world. Huge cultivation, factory farming, etc. happens. True. They receive more rainfall than desert, but less than forest. Absolutely true. If I divide these biomes as per rainfall availability, maximum rainfall you will get forest, otherwise you will get grasslands, otherwise you will get deserts. Deserts can be both hot desert or a cold desert, right? So this is also true. fire is an essential part of grassland ecosystem. True. The most important part in grassland ecosystem is statement number 2, that is availability of rainfall, followed by, of course, fire is also there, and also a lot of herbivores are present here. All these are important limiting factors in a grassland ecosystem. The answer here is 26D. Okay. Tropical rainforests are known as lungs of the earth. Is it true? Yes. Tropical rainforests are located near the equator where solar radiation is intense. True. Does this explain this? No. Then what should have explained the statement number 1? The tropical rainforests sequester huge amounts of carbon dioxide, which is why these are. So both statements are individually correct, right? But statement 2 does not explain statement 1. These kind of questions again try to practice more and more. Many times the moment we see both are correct, we automatically mark 1. But here statement 2 does not explain what is this. Okay? How many of you marked B? Chalo, very good. ठीक है. Again, you have Amazon rainforest, you have ones in the Congo basin, you also have in Southeast Asia and other parts. All these are there. Now, question number 28. Question number 28, which of the following are correctly matched? Okay. So here we are seeing desert, we are seeing tundra, we are seeing grasslands, and we are seeing tropical rainforest. Isme bhi again, if you see this part, desert, etc., again, the classification that I have told you here, the classification of biome, again as per your NCERT, etc., your vegetation is done based on the availability of moisture. So in a reason, why do I have a forest and why don't I have a grass is simply that yahan pe barish kam hoti hai. In deserts, the rainfall is very scarce. So in desert, the limiting factor is not temperature. The limiting factor can be, we can say moisture availability, or I can say even rainfall availability. So this is wrong. First is not correct. Now in tundra, again think, what do you remember about tundra? Mosses, lichens. So there will be very less nutrients available in general. So here availability of nutrient is a huge factor. This is fine. Grassland, same thing, moisture availability. Okay, and the same thing you can also say. Now when I say tropical rainforest, in this a very specific thing. If you want to remember 2 or 3 keywords in tropical rainforest, one I've already told you is epiphytes. These are commensalism. Okay. Second thing to remember here in this case is the formation of canopies. Okay. Ab dekho, in the tropical rainforest, what happens? Very tall trees are there. They create these canopies. So a lot of small trees, shrubs, herbs, they are not able to grow because of intense competition for availability of light. This is a huge challenge in this case, which is why while you can see tall trees, but other vegetation is not that prominent here. Other than that, you also know tropical rainforest, are they rich in nutrients or poor in nutrients? Poor, mainly because of excessive leaching that happens. Okay, so even the tropical rainforests are poor. So you cannot expect to have extensive agriculture. Agriculture nahi hota yahan pe. So poor nutrient availability. So what should be the answer here? C, only 3. Question 28. Yes. Limiting factor देखो, आप कोई भी, whenever we see an ecosystem, what is that main key factor that is related to the health of that ecosystem? For example, if I say phosphorus is the limiting factor for aquatic ecosystem, is it true or false? It is true. If you have more phosphorus, more planktons will go, that will lead to algal bloom. Limiting factor in this case biome mein is that if you have, for example, availability of nutrients of water available in a desert, then the desert and its species can also live and thrive. And it is that factor that is going to be responsible for the formation of that particular biome. Biome in general are defined by the specific climates. Okay, so when I say a desert may, it is not, for example, a desert can have variations in temperature. Deserts can be on the margins of the continent, they can also be inland, but that is not the main limiting factor. The main limiting factor is availability of moisture, which ultimately leads to the formation of these deserts. Right. Okay, ये क्वेश्चन थोड़ा ज्यादा आसान हो गया शायद. Paris Agreement. Now let's see. Key feature of Paris Agreement. How many of you are aware about Paris Agreement? सुना है कुछ ऐसा होता है? What is this? In which year it happened? So this is also known as COP21. This is 2015. How is Paris Agreement different from Kyoto? Kyoto had set legally binding targets for developed countries. Now this is open for both developed and developing countries, and it is famous for principles like CBDR, CBDR, RC, common but differentiated responsibilities, respective capabilities, etc. Now it allows countries to set targets, was fine, but are these targets binding for emission reduction? Not really. For this you have terms like nationally determined contributions or intended nationally determined contributions. Yes, it creates a global carbon tax system. If it would have, we all of us would have known. ठीक, ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं है. A global carbon, or world's first carbon border tax was there in news. That is separate, not here. That was by EU carbon border adjustment mechanism, which is referred to as the world's first carbon border tax. It is still not a global carbon tax system, by the way. कि EU में कुछ भी import करोगे, if it is not or it does not meet the criteria, they will put an import tariff on that. That is CBAM. Is India opposing it or is India supporting it? India is opposing it. Okay, so that is wrong. This is also not wrong. Sorry, this is also wrong. It includes a financial support mechanism for developing countries. Yes, Paris Agreement spoke about reduction of temperature by 1.5 degree to 2 degrees Celsius. Second, it spoke about developed countries should transfer $100 billion per year to developing countries. Now this specific mandate was mentioned in Green Climate Fund, but the Paris Agreement spoke about it again and again. Has it been done till now? Nahi. But on जो हम कर नहीं पाए, we have not been able to achieve 100 billion, but now in the COP29 we have said $300 billion per year, and that is NCQG, new collective quantified goal. So that is also, this is if you are preparing, if you are not able to meet targets, make even bigger targets. Okay, that is the idea. So don't have to be very much. So this is correct. Let's also see option number 4. It mandates all countries should reduce emissions by 40%. ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं है. Okay, the moment you see mandates etc. in Paris Agreement, that is wrong. Okay, 29. Okay, which of the following species has adapted to survive in the desert ecosystem? Okay, in this, for which species are you 100% sure? GIB. Where is GIB mostly found? The answer is desert national park, mostly found. Of course, it is also found in other regions, so this has to be correct. Now, I'll just show you some of these species. This is your fennec fox. This is also one of the species which has adapted itself to be found or to be survive in the desert ecosystem. That's true. You have the meerkat. This is also living in some of the specific Kalahari desert and other desert areas. So this is also true. These are meerkats. Okay. GIB is also one. But this is black buck. Black buck is generally wanting scrubs area or grasslands for its survival, though it is also present in parts of Rajasthan, but it is more suited for these other regions. Black buck, of course, was in news. We already know that. It is worshipped by which community? Bishnoi community. Now here, of course, we know they also worship something known as, what is the other thing that worship? No, that is the khejri tree. Okay. Now here just a couple of things you should know. Of course, they worship Guru Jambeshwar. And these particular, let's say, black bucks and the trees are also seen to be the incarnation of Guru Jambeshwar. That is first thing to remember here. And second thing to note here, Bishnoi is actually made from an amalgam of two terms. Okay, so just a second. That is Bish. One is related to bees. That is 20. 1 second. See, Bishnoi is, Bish is 20 and Noi is 9, no. So these are some 29 principles laid by the Guru Jambeshwar that they are actually worshipping and they are following. That is the main core idea. The Bish is 20, Noi is 9. So 29 principles overall that are there. Okay, so main thing is Guru Jambeshwar, and from that they are worshipping. So maybe something on that front, because has been in news not just this year, for a couple of years back to back. Okay. So this is more suited to a different habitat, not to deserts. Okay, so keep that in mind. Other three things, fennec fox, yes. This. So here, what is the best answer? Which species are adapted to survive in desert? Now, this question can also be transformed. What adaptations are found in animals or plants in desert ecosystem? So there is something known as a kangaroo rat. Now, kangaroo rat is able to have very concentrated urine, is able to oxidize its own fat. Because of that, it takes very less water. Same thing, camels. Camels have their pouch. आपने सुना होगा कि sometimes if you kill that camel from the pouch, you can take almost 40 liters of water. सुना है ऐसा कभी? Again, there are some stories like that. So they are able to do that. Camels have double humps. They have very, let's say, open web feet because they have to move in desert. That is there for animals. Okay, so they will have very limited availability, or they can withstand such harsh temperatures. Same thing is also present in plants. You have cactus. So in that you will have, for example, thorns instead of leaves. Large fleshy stem. Okay, waxy stem. All of that is to conserve water. GIB say in the coming classes also we'll have more discussions. GIB is important. GIB ka status anybody remembers? Great Indian Bustard? Critically endangered? Okay. Now, desert soils, देखो direct सवाल है. Desert soils are typically rich in organic matter, but poor, और उल्टा होना चाहिए. They can be rich in minerals, but they will not be rich in organic matter. One is wrong, you get your answer. Deserts contribute to global dust storms. Of course, if there is wind blowing, deserts will lead to Sahara Desert, सुना है आपने? You have also maybe heard about Sachin's best innings in Sahara Desert Storm. Okay, so again, if you remember that, नहीं तो वैसे भी कर सकते हो इसको. Third statement, cold oceans current play an important role in formation of deserts. Are these cold ocean currents or warm ocean currents? So now give me name of desert and the name of cold ocean currents to support that. Beniguela current, let's say Beniguela. Which desert? ठीक है, नाबिब के साथ we can say. What about Humboldt current? Good, that is one. Okay, so again, just remember. And why? Because they will play a desiccating effect. Okay, now these deserts are found in the, there are two things. You have two zones. So if you have the onshore winds, you have offshore winds. So deserts are visited by the offshore winds. एक और चीज है that is not asked. These deserts are found on the western margins. Okay, plus if there is a mountain, you have a windward side, you have a leeward side. On which side you will have more rainfall? Windward. So that is why when you see the eastern Ghats, and that to the eastern side of eastern Ghats, it will have more rainfall. But the moment your moisture laden winds cross this, you have the leeward side, lesser rainfall here. Okay, so when you get, so desert formation is because of this rain shadow effect. The winds are not onshore, these are offshore. Plus you have cold ocean currents, right? Cacti, अब ऐसे सवाल, cacti are native to all deserts globally. This will be wrong. And for this, I would generally say, at least remember the names of 5 to 6 species found in deserts. We've given you some examples of meerkat, etc. They are found. Plants may write down the names of certain examples. I can give you examples like Optunia. Cacti, of course, is there. Even khejri trees, we can say, can be withstanding in certain deserts. 3 or 4 examples you can add. Okay, so here the answer, you already know 31, the answer is 2 and 3. Now, this is very important. Very recently the report was released, almost in the end of December, which is why if you're following any magazine, most probably in January you will see this update. Okay, so Indian State of Forest Report 2023. So 2 things to remember right now. This is the 18th edition. Now this report is published in every 2 years. Last report came in 2021. अब आई 2023 में. Of course the report has been released in 2025. So you guys are lucky. अभी नया report पढ़नी पड़ेगी, right? Now it is published by which organization? Forest Survey of India. Forest Survey of India functions under which ministry? Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. Now in this case, which of the following metric, जब भी कोई नई चीज हो रही है, in this case what is a new metric to assess the ecosystem health introduced in this report? पहली बात तो I'll just tell you, in the previous forest report, 17th forest report, forest and tree cover was 24.62%. 18th report mein it has become Very good, 25.17%. So normal trend based सवाल क्या होगा? Has it increased or decreased? It has increased. I've used the term forest and tree cover. It means both of them have a different meaning in our report. Okay, so if you find time tomorrow or day after tomorrow, at least basic terms you should know. The forests are classified based on the density. Okay, so there are certain terms: very dense forest, medium dense forest, etc. एक चीज याद रखेंगे, this has increased from 24.62 to 25.17. Okay, other thing to remember, what is India's target? So even by the National Forest Policy of 1952 and also the National Forest Policy of 1988, our target is 33%. That is 1/3. हम है कहाँ पे? 25 पे, which means more work has to be done. Here the answer is this: Forest Fire Susceptibility Index. This is the answer. But I want to give you something extra also. ये एक टर्म लिखा है, ट्री आउटसाइड फॉरेस्ट, इंडेक्स और डेंसिटी मेंशन्ड है. एक फेमस इनिशिएटिव है, ट्री आउटसाइड फॉरेस्ट इनिशिएटिव. दिस इज नॉट रिलेटेड टू इट, प्लीज नो. ट्री और टॉफी, आपने ये सुना है न्यूज में? USAID and what Trump is doing and all the things. So TOFI is a project of joint collaboration of USAID and Ministry of Environment and Forest. The name is Tree Outside Forest in India. This is just a specific additional piece of information. Tree Outside Forest in India. Okay. So just remember these two. Led by, this is not very important, CIFOR and World Agroforestry, but this is important. They can give you, this is by FAO or this is by some other body, United Nations Forum on Forest, will get confused. This is specific to USAID, and USAID was in news in the almost recent 1 month. Just remember that. Other things related to the report, for this IFSR, I will have a dedicated session in which I'll cover everything. This will be in the HYT, that is a high yielding series. 2021 report also I had covered as an HYT previously. So I'll do that in the coming days, etc. that you can follow. Okay. Now, which of the following? Ye question I would want you to just put. I think everybody can answer this question now. Try to answer this. Aquatic organisms are primarily responsible for production of oxygen. What are they asking you? Phytoplanktons. So please tell me what is the answer. A. Why are marine mammals not the answer? Marine mammals like dugong eat seagrass. So they are not doing this, right? Why is the answer not 4? Very good. So when we say coral reefs have coral polyps. Coral polyps are plants or animals? These are animals. They will have a symbiotic association with zooxanthellae. Zooxanthellae is our algae. Spelling can be wrong. एक बार check कर लेना. Zooxanthellae is some. No, it starts with an X. Z है पक्का? अच्छा, okay. So 4 is wrong. You know why it is wrong? 3 is wrong. Marine mammal का good example is dugong. Dugong is sea cow. Sea cow is herbivore. True or false? True. Okay. Here the answer is 1. How many of you marked only 1 here? Good job. किस किसने गलत किया इसको? What did you mark? अच्छा, coral polyps मारा है. ठीक है. Now you know the answer. Coral reef में there are 2 things. Coral polyp. अच्छा, you tell me. Coral polyps are made up of calcium carbonate, hard shells. These are coral polyps. This will provide support. This will provide food. Very basic question. I think many of you would have made this mistake. Coral सबने देखा होगा. Coral leaf से सोच के मारा होगा. ठीक है. Okay. नहीं, अगर सिर्फ zooxanthellae होता तो सही होता. Zooxanthellae is what is creating it. The example that you were discussing is again a case of mutualism. It is also creating a confusion. That is not correct, ना? Okay. हम हमेशा ये सोचते हैं. We always the most extreme thing कि सर ये भी होगा, ये भी तो क्या होगा? तो वैसा नहीं होगा. अगर होगा भी तो of course you will get free 2 marks. Okay. A coastal marine ecosystem experiences increased water temperature due to climate change. इस तरह क्वेश्चन पूछेगा यहाँ आपसे. थोड़े से these are application oriented. Now I will just want to know overall what did you attempt in this question? D, B, चलो एक just raise your hand people online also. This is a very conceptual question. In fact there is one more question on ocean acidification also. देखो इसमें increased water temperature है. Okay, so has anybody attempted A, B किसने किया? B, ठीक है. C, how many of you? And D, many. Okay, if you did mark B, at least thought process wise it is not that wrong. ठीक है. Although the best answer is D, we'll see why. नहीं है true. I'm not saying that, but उसमें से भी we have to find the best options here. Now we'll see at. देखो temperature increase हो रहा है. Which of the following factors is most likely to impact the rate of primary production? What is primary production here? Primary is related to biomass. Who is going to do this part? Phytoplanktons. Now if the temperature increases, there are two things that are going to happen. Number one, it is going to put a thermal stress. The moment temperature fluctuations are happening, these species are very sensitive to it. The moment there is a thermal stress, they can also get damaged, etc. That can happen. If this happens, everything will be impacted. So when I say is likely to impact the rate of primary production, they are the ones who are doing it. This can happen. Now indirectly this can also happen, altered oxygen levels, because when the temperature changes or increases, the solubility of oxygen in water also changes. If you went by that logic, it is not incorrect. But here which is the factor primary production directly जो impact करेगा, that is thermal stress on phytoplanktons. Because the moment there is a thermal stress on phytoplanktons, they will either have certain, so their productivity will also go down. Secondary thing is how they take up oxygen. If this was not there and कुछ और random option होता, then the best option could have been altered oxygen. Okay, but ऐसे questions में go for the most appropriate and the most direct option that you can find. The moment there is a thermal stress, this will directly impact the rate of primary production in an ecosystem. Is this fine? So here, of course, we have the answer D. Okay, next question. Kanwar Lake is from which region? Bihar. It was Bihar's first Ramsar site. Now Bihar has two more Ramsar sites, Nagi and Nakti. Okay. So it is Asia's largest freshwater oxbow lake. You know in oxbow lake, it is visited by a lot of ox. They use a bow. Nahi? Acha. Created by the meandering. So when the river meanders slowly after a point of time, a certain part can also get detached. That will create an oxbow lake. This part is absolutely correct. Okay. How many Ramsar sites do we have in India right now? 85 थी. उससे पहले थी 75, उससे पहले कुछ और. Of course, right now the answer is 89. After 85, 4 more were added. 2 were added in Tamil Nadu. 1 was added in, what is the name? Uddhav Lake, and then Kyocho Palri in Sikkim. So total 4 were added. Now you have 89. हो सकता है in the coming test we may also test you on this particular front also. Okay. Now, so first statement is absolutely correct. Bihar has 2 now, 2 more. Nagi and Nakti. These 2 are man-made. Okay, so first is correct. Saline lakes have low biodiversity and high salt content. This is fine. Tectonic lakes are often shallow, formed by earth crust movements. See, these lakes are often deep, while this part is true. Any tectonic lake that you remember? Acha, Lona, that is a crater lake. Okay. Okay, which was also in news some time back because of it becoming pink. Why do lakes become pink? Can be one reason. Okay, or kuch? There are specific holoarchae, okay, or certain bacteria which ultimately lead to the pink color. Okay, so crater, this was in news. In India again there are certain, because of invasive species also they can become pink. Which one? No, that is a crater based lake. That is crater based lake. Okay. Now, so this is wrong. Now, this caldera wala part, volcanic lakes are formed in the caldera. This is fine. Okay. So what is the answer here? Okay, so 35. The answer is C. Now let's come to this part here. Government interventions. National Mission for Clean Ganga reduces nutrient pollution in Ganga. On this front, we have had some questions here. So again, this talks about a lot of pollution also. So that is true. Nutrient pollution, sir, what is the keyword for us? Eutrophication. Okay. Blue flag certification ensures no nutrient pollution affect beaches. This is not specific to nutrient pollution. Blue flag certification is by which organization? Denmark based FEE. Okay, that is the Foundation for Environmental Education. It is Denmark based. India has right now 12 blue flag certified beaches. Pehle 10 thi. Then in Lakshadweep 2 were added. So one was Minicoy and one was Cardamart. So Minicoy Thundi Beach and Cardamart Beach, making 12 blue flag beaches in India. So blue flag certification is simply about aesthetic management of beaches. It is not specific to nutrient pollution. Whereas Mission for Clean Ganga, we already know because river Ganga has certain pollution elements, which is why this is there, right? Next, constructed wetlands in urban water management reduce eutrophication risk. ठीक है? How? So here overall, yes, so when we construct them, the main idea, eutrophication is why is it happening? More and more nutrient is coming in. So if you are creating certain natural reservoirs, so that can be a buffer, right? Fair. Phosphorus is the primary target in policies for India's freshwater bodies. Sahi hai. And phosphorus, please remember, is a limiting nutrient for the aquatic ecosystem. If I'm talking of river Yamuna, if I'm talking of any such rivers, it is the increased quantity of phosphates predominantly which will lead to pollution. Of course, second thing is nitrates. Nitrates is because of increasing use of fertilizers and agricultural policies. So this is also fine when we say phosphorus is the primary part. Okay. So in this only blue flag, this is incorrect. India mein 12 such beaches are there. Please remember that. Phosphorus is the primary target. That is also fine. So our answer becomes C. Huh. Sorry, they are impacted. That is separate. In this case, what we are seeing, they can also help in eutrophication risk. If you create such more bodies like that, if there is already a body, if there is a lot of man-made intervention, that can lead to eutrophication. That is, uska ulta logic hai. But what we are seeing, we are constructing a lot of these wetlands. That can also be helpful in purification. Yes or no? So from the construction part, we are saying. These are first of all ecotones. A lot of, in general, कोई भी ecosystem है, if I have wetlands or even mangroves, even that there will be some amount of purification of water that is done. That is the main part here, which reduces the risk. But ulta logic ये भी सही है कि अगर हम say, if we say wetlands are, let's say the threat to wetlands is also human pollution or eutrophication that is there. But यहाँ पे we are talking of constructed wetlands in urban water management. If you are doing something, this is for habitat restoration. अपना National Mission for Clean Ganga में, if you read the objective, उसमें one of the thing specific is mentioned related to wetland. If we create that, that is also going to help. We've asked you a question on this concept also. Bhi kuch time mein, I'll also show that to you. So here answer is C, 1, 3 and 4. Sea snot. How many of you have heard this term? Nahi suna hai? So this was a sea snot happened in Turkey. First of all, this is how it looked like. So this is again a kind of an algal bloom which has happened here. So this was covered. So sea snot covers Turkish coast, threatening the fishing industry. This is how it looks like. Okay, sea snot. Pollution is related to it. Sea of Marmara. This is the whole region here. So now let's see the questions. Sea snot is caused by excessive growth of phytoplanktons in nutrient rich waters. Absolutely true. It can reduce the oxygen levels leading to fish kills. Bilkul sahi hai. Sea snot is beneficial for marine ecosystem. Bhai, these two cannot go hand in hand. This is wrong. Sea snot is harmful, just like eutrophication can be harmful. The answer for 37 is 1 and 2. The other name for sea snot is marine mucilage. Okay, and yahan pe plankton species that are specific are coccolithophores that we just saw. Coccolithophores are here. Okay, so that is one thing that we'll remember overall. So marine mucilage and this overall discussion. The only difference between a sea snot and a normal algal bloom is that this is more sticky in nature. Okay, because of these coccolithophores. So baki slimy and sticky layer is created, which is again a source of a problem. Okay. Now, estuaries support high biodiversity due to mixing of fresh water and sea water. Yes or no? Yes. High biodiversity is primarily due to constant salinity levels. No, that's not true. These are fluctuating in nature. However, the species that live here have adapted to the fluctuating salinity levels. It's not that the salinity is constant here. So this is not correct. The answer becomes C. Statement 1 is correct. Statement 2 is incorrect. Okay. So estuary is where fresh water meets the marine water, salt water. Highly, these are again fresh water, salt water. Very productive fishing zones. Yes or no? A lot of population lives here. One of the most productive zones of the world are these. Okay. Ecosystem services provided by mangroves. Okay. Habitats for marine life. Yes. How many of you marked all 5? किसी ने eliminate करा है? How which options? अब देखो prevention of desertification in inland areas. बताओ. Where are mangroves present? Coast. How can they do this? उड़ के आएंगे? नहीं, मुश्किल है. This is very, so this that does not, so this is areas, AES. This is not correct. Direct, this is not correct. Filtration of pollutants from water, this they do. For that, these are very important. Source of timber, yes. Now this, अब ये देखो, इस term में ये भी नहीं लिखा oxygen project. It is not written oxygen production. It is written global oxygen. Then significant global oxygen production. Significant oxygen global production is done by number 1 phytoplanktons. 50% of global oxygen production is by phytoplanktons. 50. 20 से 30 के बीच में it is up by the tropical rainforests. These are the main 2 sources. If this option was a significant source of carbon sequestration, then this answer is right. Not oxygen production. Why? Mangroves are a part of blue carbon. They are present on the coast. They are very helpful in carbon sequestration. They store 3 to 5 times more carbon than the normal forest. But they are not a significant source of global oxygen production. कहीं terms में there will be some adjectives added. You have to look at it carefully. So this is wrong. 5 is of course wrong because they are present in coast. They cannot do desertification in inland areas, etc. The answer is here only 3. Okay. Okay. Ministry of Earth Sciences has highlighted microplastics has adversely affected plankton population. Which of the following is the primary reason for harmful impact? अच्छा कौन सा? 40 मुझे दिखाओ, रुक जाओ, इसमें है कि नहीं है? अच्छा. Please tell me what is question number 40? ठीक है, रुक जाओ. There are 2 statements here. अच्छा चलो आपके साथ देखते हैं. First statement is ocean acidification decreases the availability of carbonate ions which are essential for coral calcification. पक्का? बिल्कुल सही है. अब देखो होता क्या, what happens in the process? And second is CBD has specific provisions for protection of coral reefs. The answer is true. In fact, Aichi biodiversity targets and other targets specific provisions were there for coral reefs. Now, in this question, main thing to remember here is we are talking of ocean acidification, right? देखो जो the corals, what do they need? These are marine calcifiers. Corals के लिए सबसे important चीज is the availability of carbonates. This is what they will use for calcifying process. So in a normal life, in a normal day, they get abundant supply of carbonates. But in ocean acidification, what is happening? Carbon dioxide is more, which means carbonic acid is more. Carbonates will be broken down to bicarbonates. So during ocean acidification, or let's say during climate change, global warming, bicarbonate is increasing. But you want what? You want carbonates. This is decreasing. This is getting disintegrated because of increasing carbon dioxide and H2CO3. More bicarbonates are not helpful for corals. So what ends up happening? Slowly and steadily the coral reefs, etc., they will start to disintegrate, decline. So marine जितने भी calcifying organisms हैं, because of lesser availability of carbonate ions are impacted. Other thing can be increase of bicarbonate. Yes, but bicarbonate does not help them. This is the issue. जो marine calcifiers हैं, they want carbonate ions. In this case, in question number 40, this is there. Okay, so let me just show me the question again. हाँ. The question is saying which of the following is correct? Ocean acidification decreases the availability of carbonate ions. Yes. Which is essential? Yes. Correct है first statement. CBD has specific provisions for protection of coral reefs. True. The answer for 40 is C. Both. 41. Reasons for harmful impact of microplastics on planktons. Okay. अब देखो ये this is a very straightforward question. Increase the salinity of water. क्यों भाई? Release nutrients that can cause algal blooms, disrupting phytoplanktons. देखो, this is also not true. Are mistaken for food by planktons. They eat it up, and again this harm is created. This happens throughout. And by the way, can this also lead to bio accumulation and also magnification? This can also then end up in our food chain. This is a challenge. So this is correct. So microplastics through various ways can impact wildlife, can impact human. See, it can also enter our food chains. This is the whole challenge alongside, right? Melting of polar ice caps due to global warming may lead to, very easy question, alteration in ocean currents and nutrient disruption. Yes. Kyunki, for example, if there are warm water currents moving from equator to polar regions, Greenland ice sheet is melting. This will lead to this warm current becoming colder in nature. So earlier, for example, if you have Europe had warm water ports. Europe was not frozen throughout the year. They were warm currents. Now these warm currents will be impacted by melting of polar ice caps. They will become cold. And what I'm referring to, you can also mention in your margins, read about this. Atlantic Meridional Ocean circulations. This is one of the tipping points. जो मैंने बताया explanation, almost the same thing is there. Increased CO2 absorption by polar seas. Right? More carbonic acid, more global warming. This is true. Migration of marine species towards the equator. Should it be towards the poles? Poles. So this is wrong. The answer is 1 and 2. Which group is primarily responsible for the phenomena known as red tides? Acha, kyun? Why? 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 My question is why, and what is the context? Some of you may have done it in the prelims crash course. I've already told it. No, that should not be the reasoning exactly. ठीक है. देखो, how many of you remember Noctiluca? सुना है Noctiluca? नहीं सुना? चलो अभी बता देते हैं. अच्छा, how many of you have seen the bioluminescence, the glowing of beaches? Okay, glowing of beaches is because of Noctiluca. So Noctiluca can also cause bioluminescence. The same Noctiluca can also lead to these red tides. So what happens here, again this was in news in almost in every year, you will see red tides in Puducherry in some of the parts. What is happening? For example, Noctiluca, this is again marine dinoflagellates, they have certain red pigments. Okay, so there is a certain algal bloom. When they are put under pressure, आपने सुना होगा, eutrophication leads to algal bloom. Now algal bloom can also be HAB, harmful algal bloom. Why is it harmful? Because certain toxins are released. So in this case, a dinoflagellate, a specific example is Noctiluca. Noctiluca is releasing certain red pigments. Entire lake is becoming red because of that. That is known as red tide. So red tide is related to harmful algal bloom also. Another thing, this same Noctiluca which you are seeing during the, let's say, night time, when the oceans are glowing, it is a specific luciferin enzyme, and there is a luciferase. It is this enzymes that lead to bioluminescence when the glow happens. Baki, you have heard about jugnu. Okay, what is jugnu in English? Fireflies. Okay, even mushrooms are there which can glow. So the property of bioluminescence is also seen in Noctiluca. Even red tide is also seen in Noctiluca. Both can be there. So this answer here is this. Other examples, yes, you are right. Krills, this euphos, jo bhi naam hai, copepods, all these are examples of certain zooplanktons. Okay, harmful algal blooms. Zoo, yes. Zooplankton में भी crustaceans हो सकते हैं. Krill etc. is a crustacean, but overall it is a zooplankton. So it is not that कि crustaceans अलग हैं और zoo अलग है. हाँ, नहीं crustaceans जैसे हमारा वो गया, आपने बोला नाइडेरिया, नहीं अलग है, दोनों अलग है. Crustaceans one of the good example is crab. नाइडेरिया में jellyfish, coral reefs, two different phylums. Now, seagrass main thing to remember, are they flowering or not? Batao bhai. Yes. If this was seaweed, these are non-flowering. Seaweed, non-flowering. Seagrass, flowering. They are formed under the underwater meadows. Yes. They play a crucial role in carbon sequestration mitigation. Of course, yes. तो अगर हम देखेंगे यहाँ पे carbon sequestration, storage, everything, all the functions the seagrass will do. Seagrass are found exclusively in tropical regions. No. Seagrass is mostly eaten by dugong, sea cow. Where is Dugong Conservation Reserve? Park Bay in Gulf of Tamil Nadu, Gulf of Mannar. Question number 44, the answer is A. Seaweed, non-flowering, sea grass, flowering. Okay. Application of seaweeds, ऐसे questions में, if you see cosmetic, textile, pharmaceutical can be provisioning services. They can be used to treat anti-cancer, etc. Different compounds. They will be there. And aerospace component fabrication can also be done via seaweed. Seaweeds. This is true. All four can be the application here of seaweeds. So various applications. India is promoting seaweed farming. So we should be aware. Pharmaceutical, fertilizer, biogas, wastewater, food, so on and so forth. Aquatic ecosystems. Now this question is easy to attempt because statement number 1 and 3 are not going hand in hand. Marine ecosystems are more stable than freshwater ecosystems. Marine, these are the ocean ecosystems. Very wide, very overall spread. So they are overall more stable. True. Let's leave second. Freshwater ecosystems are more diverse. The more diverse a ecosystem, the more stable it is. Remember that. Which is why the climax community are both very diverse and very stable. So if this is true, this cannot be true. So that means marine ecosystem are both very diverse and very stable. Is this clear? So this is wrong. If this is wrong, of course you get your answer. Then second is also easy. Platform from the base. This I think statement has been repeated. Okay. Fine. 446. Then India has launched a major afforestation initiative, Green India 2.0. You will see such initiatives just as a one-liner, remember it. In this case, there is a chance you may have not heard about it. Now you can remember, to double the forest cover in 10 years. ठीक है? बाकी कुछ questions भी हैं, तो slightly these are very extreme. Still you can have gotten to it. This is the correct answer. You want to double the forest cover. Now, which of the following ecosystem functions the Namami Gange program primarily aims to enhance for the river Ganga? ठीक है? अब इसमें सबसे important part क्या है? That has to be in the answer. This has to be there. In addition to that, there again I've told you riverfront development, again afforestation, biodiversity conservation, and even wetlands. All these process restoration is being done, which also supports habitat provision. Other two things, primary production, it means if you want to grow the algae or phytoplanktons, that is not the directly, let's say, main function of this. So this is not there. And even nutrient cycling is a very much, if the river ultimately becomes clean, after a period of time, nutrient cycling will happen. But that is again not the explicit or the direct or the primary objective. So here the best answer is only 2. Which is why habitat आप ऐसे भी सोच सकते हो. Again a lot of talk is about Gangetic river dolphin also, right? उसके conservation की बात होती है. Again biodiversity, so river surface cleaning, afforestation, river front development. So habitat is also there, plus the water purification is also there. 49, trophic cascade. Just remember again, you know this now. If you remove any important species, the whole ecosystem can collapse, just like a domino effect. Okay. So trophic cascades are always initiated by the removal or addition of apex predator, not necessary. It is there in cases like Yellowstone National Park when wolves were removed. But of course, even the addition or removal of certain prey can also lead to a trophic cascade. So this is wrong. Okay, if this is wrong, 2 has to be right. 2 is they have a significant impact on the ecosystem stability. Correct? Trophic cascades can only occur in terrestrial. Nahi, they can also occur in oceanic ecosystem. Ocean ka best example I'll give you. You know sea otter? Sea otter eats sea urchin. Sea urchin eats kelp forest. Okay, kelp is nothing but microalga. ठीक है? ढेर सारे seaweed in one place is kelp forest. So here this also is wrong. In ocean ecosystem it can also occur. Answer is B. Okay, before and after we know again if you remove the top carnivore or any of the species, rapid changes can happen in the ecosystem. And then we are left with the last question. Wetlands play a significant role in the carbon cycle by storing large amounts of carbon. Do they do that? Sequestration? Yes. Wetlands experience rapid decomposition of organic matter, releasing minimal methane. This is not true. Wetlands are sources of methane emission, and it is not minimal, it is significant amount. So purely by this it is wrong. The answer becomes C. Okay. So with this we come to the end of this test discussion. So though if you have any other question, I think after the class we can also meet, because I think now the next class is also supposed to start. Again, read the topics if you're able to read for the tomorrow's test. Even if you're not able to complete all the topics, come with the confidence, attempt the test, see the discussion. You will learn a lot from the discussion here also. Okay. Again, we'll meet tomorrow then. All the very best. If there's any doubt for the people offline, I am here for let's say 2-3 more minutes. You can just drop a text in the YouTube section. I'll just, or in the comment section, I'll respond very. And we've discussed a lot of things, etc. So you can keep on noting that. So that would always be helpful. In the other test also, any other current affair, any other thing that is there with that topic, I'll keep on adding that. Okay. Thank you so much. Okay, welcome all of you, Sophia, Roshni, Abhay, Mansi, other people. I hope you got a lot of value from the session. And now from the next test onwards, try to implement some of the learnings, right? Okay then. All the best. All the best.